Hello there, my name's Ian, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Joining me today is my good buddy Mike, calling in from New York. And today we are going to talk about one of our most favorite and special comfort bands, Rush. But first, I thought we would just start kind of giving everybody a feel. Just talk about our relationship with Rush. How did we discover them? Why are they so important to us? And I'll let you go first, Mike.
Sure. So Rush has been a band that I've been a fan of for a very long time. I first heard Rush, I think, when I was in maybe the 7th grade or 9th grade. It's hard to remember truthfully, but my two uncles got me into Rush. My first albums, I believe, were 2112 and Moving Pictures. And then, it was almost love at first listen, really. I love Rush. And in high school, they were my favorite band. I still always liked them, but I kind of listened to them less because I was discovering other things. But now, the older I get, the more I appreciate just how amazing this band is.
Yeah.
And what a really special and consistently great discography that they put out. They always stay true to their artistic merit, and they always have a deep impact with me personally because the music and lyrics are just so good and so meaningful.
Yeah, I agree. I can't remember the first time I heard them, but it seems like it was around the time of the 1997 Masters when that program came out. So I was very young. I won't tell you how young I was because I don't want to date myself here. But my dad was a huge Rush fan, and when he would buy the 1997 remasters, he would always give me the original copies, the original Mercury label copies. And so I was introduced to Rush through that. I totally agree with you. There's not another story quite like theirs. This is two guys who were best friends. Maybe they were kind of outcasts in the little town that they grew up, Willowdale, as features in some of the early mythology too. But they were basically just two buddies, and by chance they hooked up with this amazing drummer who at the time was working a parts counter at his dad's hardware store. But he had these big dreams, and, he packed up his cases and, went to go audition, and, that was it. They maintained those three personalities over 40 years of different stylistic changes, and the way that they were able to pull that off, I think is, and we'll get more into that as we start talking about each individual album, but I think that they stayed true to the core trio and they stayed true to themselves. But they brought in production team to make, that was always the way in which they grew, is that they would always work with different people. And then, there's also that, and I know I'm rambling a little bit, but there's also the remarkable thing that they used the same cover designer from 1975 on.
It's amazing.
And that in itself, if you just look at the album covers next to each other, they're as diverse looking at the cover arts as they are listening to them. And the fact that this is just one guy's artistic vision, on the covers, as well as the three of them in the music, I think is something that makes this a very cohesive catalog. And by the way, very difficult to rank.
Yes, extremely difficult to rank.
The quality is just kind of consistent. And, there's obviously there's a couple that I knew were going to be at the bottom. And I knew there was going to be some at the top, but it was everything in between that was kind of hard to lock down on, because it's well, what am I in the mood for today? How can I compare, say, the self-titled Rush album to Grace Under Pressure? You can't.
It's so different. Yeah.
They're so different. Yeah, there's no comparison. But I think I'm going to let you get started with your ranking. So the way that we're going to handle this ranking is a little bit different than what we've done before. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to go with Mike's ranking. And I have my own, and we're going to kind of compare it to my thoughts, and we're going to discuss it. But I'll let you get started. So there's 19 albums, right? 19?
Yes, 19 studio albums. We're doing the studio albums.
And that's also important to note, is that we won't be doing any of the live records, even though they're fantastic. That might be a video of its own at some point, say if this does well. And the only way to really show your support and encourage us to do more of this sort of thing is to comment on the video, to like it, and especially subscribe to the channel, because the analytics matter. But yeah, we will not be talking about the EP
feedback, yeah,
because it's not a studio album, and it's not Rush music. So it was kind of hard to
it's almost like a tribute album in a way.
Right, kind of to their very early roots.
Yeah, and all the live stuff is different too. And there's a lot of live albums. But if you want to hear us rank those, let us know in the comments.
Yes. Well, so we're going to start at number 19. You want to tell us what your least favorite Rush record is?
Yeah. So my number 9. So I surprised myself. My number 19. When we started this, I thought it was going to be one album, but it actually changed. And my number 19 is Vapor Trails. That is my number 19. It's from 2002, right? Is the year it came out? Yeah. This is one that I haven't heard in quite a while. It's got an original version and it's got a remix. Ian is showing both of them. I only have the original on disc, but the remix, I've heard on streaming a few times too. This is the darkest period personally for the band. Unfortunately, it kind of shows in the music.
Yeah.
I know. So this is a very interesting album in a lot of ways.
Do you want to talk briefly about why it's so dark?
Sure. You could probably elaborate more on why it's so dark, but so after the previous album before this is Test for Echo, and afterwards Neil had lost both his wife and his daughter
within 10 months of each other.
Within 10 months, yeah, and that awful shock caused the band to go on hiatus. And they were, essentially like Neil said that he was done after that happened. It was like Rush was dead
for 5 years.
A couple of years. Yeah, 5 years they were dead.
And he took his BMW across the countryside. I need to read his Ghost Rider book.
So do
but I think a lot of that was like travels through North America.
Yep.
And kind of, it's sort of like the whole idea of I've never had children or anything, or even younger brothers and sisters, but you always talk about how movement cures. It's like it cures your baby soul.
Yes.
And that's what he did. He took a movement treatment, basically. That was his therapy. And there are songs, on this record that directly deal with that. And the most obvious one being Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
Which is actually directly about that trauma, but also like The Stars Look Down. That's Neil looking up at the stars, at the starry sky, and saying, "Why me? Why did this have to happen to me?" And the stars look back at him and say, "Figure it out. You got to figure that out." So there's lots of really great ideas on this album, and for me, it's not my least favorite. It's my second to least favorite, and I for one thing, I think it's proof that, the whole idea that an artist has to be in pain to create great art is not true. That number one, that's it's kind of evidence against that misconception. But that's also not the major problem I have with it. There's like an off vibe to it. A lot of Rush music to me is joyous. It's happy. It lifts me up. And there's something about this one that just feels a little bit off. And in the when they made it, they were getting into their heads a little too much, I think, thinking that we've lost the spark. We need to regain this because we haven't been playing together in 5 years. I think that a little bit of that ended up hurting the record because they were recording a lot of their demos and being like, well, that's the effect that we want. That's the sound we want. And they were kind of afraid that if they went and belabored it too much, that they would lose some of that energy, which is understandable. But the result of that was that the recordings themselves had gain distortion problems that got even worse when they went to master the record, simply because at this time, 2002, loudness was king. And everybody was trying to out loud each other with their mastering. And so I think the combination of the demo recordings not being so great with the poor mastering of the time, as well as the external problems within the band, I think it makes it. It's not my least favorite Rush record because I like the songs on it. A couple of the songs, like One Little Victory, is a great tune.
Yeah, that opening riff is pretty powerful with the double bass drum kicking in. Mm-hmm. That's like, them saying, "We're back."
We're back.
It's
right.
Great. Yeah.
And when they came back with Snakes and Arrows 5 years later, to me, they were really back.
Yeah.
Like that is the really, really back album. But Peaceable Kingdom, which is a song that frankly deals with 9/11. And the fallout of 9/11 is one of my favorite songs on the album. So is Ghost Rider, which I mentioned. I think that's a fantastic song.
Too. That really surprised me on this listen. That song is terrific.
Yes, and Secret Touch.
Yeah, Secret Touch is a good one. That's Geddy's favorite too, I think. Yeah, that's a good one. I also really liked Ceiling Unlimited. That might be actually for me the best song on here. Freeze is also really good. I was really surprised by that song too. Like Freeze sounds like nothing else in the Rush catalog. Like it's just really heavy.
It is.
It does. So there's some really cool like guitar and bass effects that Geddy and Alex were doing in the back half. It sound really cool.
Well, there was this edict that came down from Alex Lifeson, and I don't think we mentioned the members of the band.
We didn't do that, did we?
Of course, the members of Rush, which remain consistent with the exception of the first album, drummer John Ruzzi, Geddy Lee, vocals, bass pedals, keyboards, and he writes the songs with Alex Lifeson, guitarist, and of course the professor on drums, Neil Peart, who's the band's lyricist. And a lot of their lyrics were a result of Neil would put these long lyrics together and Geddy would kind of edit them and make them into something that he was comfortable singing. And like, for instance, on this album, he felt uncomfortable with a lot of the personal stuff, which makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that Geddy did was he would change, like if a song had I feel this way, I did this, I took the ride. He would change it to you feel this way, you took the ride, you experienced this, to make it more universal. And that's something that, is important to mention that he did on all of the songs. Like he tried to make them more accessible to him and others. But this album also has 70-minute album-itis to me. Like it's just long, and especially the production on it makes it painful. Which is an awful thing to say, that it actually causes me pain to listen to it. And, you would think, well, hey, there is a remix and it came out in 2013. That fixes all the problems, right? No. I have to say that the remix is probably the reason why this album isn't my least favorite, because it does uncover the songs.
Yeah, it helps a lot. I think the main problem is like still the drums don't have any heft at all. They're just like paper. And like, you still get the problem with the guitar sounds because of, like you said before, the demos, all of the guitars to me sound like mud. And like everything, because of that, and because of the massive length of this album, everything just kind of starts to sound the same or feel the same for me.
Yeah. Like
half the record goes in this ear and goes right out. And it's a shame because there's some really, interesting things going on. But it's all buried under this, mud.
And part of that is, their working methods at the time. They weren't getting together and writing together like they had in the early days. And also, they would let Alex stay up all night and smoking weed and just putting just tons and tons of overdubs on the songs.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. And some of that, like, I think it's a wonderful idea. Like Alex is having fun and, playing stuff all night, being creative. But I think that somebody should have stepped in and been the producer, because they did produce this themselves, but somebody should have been the producer and said, hey, let's pull back some of those layers, maybe do a little less of that. And talking about the thin drum sound on the remix, I kind of wish that the remix would split the difference, because it's almost too clean, to the point where the drums to me sound like they're programmed. And for somebody like Neil Peart, like, that is the wrong direction, in my opinion. And I would have liked to have seen something that was a little bit heavier in the drums. Like the original mix is like overpoweringly heavy in the drums, and more presence of the guitars. And I think I would have liked this remix a lot better. As it stands, yeah, it's very near the bottom of my list as well. It's actually my second least favorite.
I don't want to keep like dunking on it, because like there's a few like songs I really like we mentioned Ghost Rider. I really like The Stars Look Down. Also, Earthshine has some good moments. I also think almost all of the material that they played live elevates every single song.
Yeah,
on here,
sure.
this stuff smoked live.
Yep.
The two things that I like the most about this record are Neil's drum parts. Like, yeah, the drums kind of sound bad on this album, but the playing is really awesome and inventive. Neil's parts are sick on here. It's also like a reinvention of himself, really. Like, he's come back from all of this hurt and all this pain, and he's playing amazing, arguably better than he's played before. And because everything moving forward too, you can argue the parts are just so creative and so inventive. And the other thing is Geddy's singing. Geddy's voice sounds awesome.
Oh, yeah.
He sings the heck out of this stuff. My number 18 was the debut album, Rush.
Who?
Who? Yeah. The first album with the big R. I don't own this one. There's two Rush albums I don't own, and this is one of them. For whatever reason, I never got it. But there it is. The bright pink font.
That's not what I wanted. I wanted that.
Yeah. And this one is the only Rush album without Neil Peart. It's with their original drummer, John Rutsey. Yeah,
so why is this not your least favorite? Why is it your
this one was the one I thought was going to be on the bottom before we listened to every album the past 2 weeks or week and a half.
Which is a lot of music, folks.
It's a lot of music, yeah. Honestly, I would really have even further appreciation because I listened to nothing but Rush for the past 2 weeks and I didn't get bored once.
Mm-hmm.
And which is really a testament to how great the music is and how
it's actually really easy to get carried away.
Yeah, exactly.
Listening to Rush.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, like this album is down here because it's, you don't have Neil, and Neil I think is a really essential part of what makes this band so great.
Sure.
And also it's kind of really, it's nice 70s rock, but it is like 70s rock that's fairly derivative. Like a lot of it, I was like, this is like a Deep Purple record, like almost the whole way through.
Mm-hmm.
There's some, there's nice stuff on here, but it's, it doesn't really sound like Rush a lot of the time. It sounds like Deep Purple and a little bit of Black Sabbath and Zeppelin thrown in.
Yep.
I had fun. It's a fun record for sure, and I think that's why I bumped it up one notch, because I had more fun with this album than I did with Vapor Trails. But it's still somewhat standard blues rock with great guitar solos from Alex.
Yep. Yeah, I really feel like where this album succeeds is in the songwriting with from Geddy and Alex, and it's held back in the drumming department because their songwriting is really strong, their playing is really strong, the singing is really strong. Like, yes, I had this notion that early 70s Rush was unlistenable in the vocal department, and that was just like a memory thing because I hadn't heard a lot of these records in a while. But I was surprised at how good his singing is, even right out the gate. He's got really good resonance, and it grabs you. Like a song like Finding My Way is a classic for a reason. And they played that in 76 on All the World's a Stage album, and they were still playing. I think they even played it throughout the 80s, like maybe Show of Hands.
They did.
It's in one of the medleys. Yep. But In the Mood is another great memorable song. Of course, Working Man.
Yeah, Working Man's the best one.
A lot of people like Gene Simmons of Kiss would probably say that Rush accomplished all they needed to back then with Working Man, because that's a huge song. That was the one that Donna Halper discovered working on the radio in Cleveland, which is just right up the hill for me these days. But she introduced Rush to America or America to Rush with this song. But I would also point to Here Again as kind of like a midway point. But this is like the anti-Working Man. This is like a bluesier Led Zeppelin 2 version of Working Man. But this is actually my least favorite. I have this at number 19, and the reason for that, and it was hard, but something had to be, and it had to be disqualified for a reason. And I feel personally that even though they revisited this material later on, like live, and even though Working Man is probably, it might be their best known song. I don't know, maybe Tom Sawyer is better known now. Who knows? But despite that, I feel like Rush really begins with Fly By Night. And so for that, like, I almost considered not ranking it. But it wasn't until I started thinking about how they continued playing it and how it's kind of part of the history of the band. Well, okay, it deserves a space. I might agree with you that it's more fun than Vapor Trails. And I think at one point I considered also bumping it up above it, but I still think that there's good work on Vapor Trails. It's just that there's no like great version of it. And if a really great version of that album were to come out, it might bump up a couple of spots in my own ranking.
Yeah, that might change my opinion too. But as it stands, it's on the bottom for me. But it's still like, it's a decent to good album. Like I will attest that Rush does not have a bad album in their catalog.
That's true.
Which is something that very few bands can say. And like this one too is, I would consider this a good album. Rush, yes, the self-title. I would consider it like a good album. It's not like the top of the list, which is, a masterpiece, one of the best things that music has ever seen. This is a good album,
Yeah.
And then to start off with that bass line is really amazing, truthfully.
To me, the biggest flaw here is that this is the only Rush record where they really sound like other bands.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the reason why Working Man became so popular is that Led Zeppelin themselves had moved on from that kind of music by 1974. At that point, they're heading toward Houses of the Holy, which is more of like a progressive album in a way.
Yeah.
So I could see where maybe fans who were feeling left out of the progression of Led Zeppelin would latch on to this. Sort of in the way that Led Zeppelin fans latched on to Greta Van Fleet when they were popular. But because it's like, this reminds me of something that I know and I love. But for me, that doesn't quite do it for me. I like Rush records that reward multiple listens and are full of surprises and uniqueness. And it's the least unique Rush record. And that's why it's my least favorite.
Yeah, it's well said. I feel the same way, except it's second to least.
Yeah, sure. What's your next one?
So I think this is where, my list is, I think, controversial and will potentially be different than a lot of people's lists. And I think this might be the first of the controversial picks, because I know there's people out there who love this record. I used to be one of them many moons ago. In high school, I used to love this record. But now, it's another one of those good albums, but with some flaws, I think. This is number 17, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is 17. 17 is Caresses of Steel, Rush's third album. Sorry for those who adore this record. It's low, but it's still a Rush album, so it's still good.
Yeah.
What to say? When I was in high school, right, I used to love this record. Like, I used to listen to The Necromancer almost on repeat. I loved it to pieces. It's got a really cool cover. I'm sure we can flash a thumbnail. The cover is so cool. It's got a really, like, hazy quality to the artwork and the music also.
Because of hash oil.
Yeah, exactly. Which I didn't know until you told me that. They were heavy into the hash at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, listening to it today, and the listener that I am today, I find it to be rather clunky. It starts off with Bastille Day, which is a classic Rush song that I still love. Big thumbs up, like, oh, this is killer. And then you get I Think I'm Going Bald, which is like a really weird holdover of the first album in a way. I used to like that song a lot. Now I'm just like, all right, that's something weird. What's this doing here? And then you get to Lakeside Park, which again, it's a song I used to like, but now I really don't like it. I think it's one of their weakest songs, quite honestly.
The band agrees with you.
Yeah, I know Getty agrees for sure. To me, it's just such a weird like song. It doesn't really go anywhere and doesn't really do anything interesting. It just kind of happens, right?
But that's the thing about Lakeside Park. Not to interrupt you, but
yeah.
The opening drum fill of that is like one of the most memorable Rush things ever.
The drum fill is great. Yeah.
It lives in my brain, and it's almost like a guitar riff.
Yeah,
how musical it is.
Yeah, you're right. It's like instant like Neil genius to have a fill like that because it is a melody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of people don't view their drum set as a melodic instrument, but it totally is a melodic instrument. You know, when you hit a different surface, that's a different pitch, right? It should be melodic. That's the power of Neil that makes something interesting, even in something that I find not very interesting. But the part of this record that I really like is side 2. The Necromancer is awesome. I love that piece, except for sometimes the narration is really low in the mix and it's hard to hear.
Isn't that side 1?
Is it side 1?
I think Necromancer is side 1. I have this on vinyl, not to brag.
Yeah, that's my bad. I'm sorry, everybody. I only had this on CD, and so in my brain I lumped the two epic pieces together.
Oh,
that's probably why I thought it was side 2. But Necromancer is still side 1. Yeah, I love it. The narration is kind of inaudible, but man, the music is cooking. Alex plays some amazing guitar solos on this, and the band is just hot. I wish like they would play that live. I don't know if they've ever played the Necromancer live, to be honest.
They did on the Down the Tubes tour. I'm pretty certain they did.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
The Down the Tubes tour is the unofficial name of the Caress of Steel tour, because if you follow the band's history at this time, so it's interesting, but basically they had a decent amount of success with the first Rush album, and people really liked it. Audiences really responded to it. It was played on the radio. With Fly By Night, it was kind of like, okay, this is one more. Like, this is now we're opening for Kiss and other kind of up and coming bands at that time. But this was the first time where, commercially speaking, they took a step backwards, and it looked like they were on their downward spiral, to borrow a Trent Reznor-ism. So they named the tour the Down the Tubes tour because they were playing smaller venues. They were, opening for people who were also on their way out, in terms of their place in the music business. And as it stands, I think I think the band would agree with me that this album is a very important, part of their discography, because, and you also got to remember that, like, at the time, the management was looking at Neil and pointing a finger at Neil and saying, you are a bad influence on these boys. You are making this weird progressive rock music. You guys are supposed to be straight ahead. And, it leads to Neil storming out on their management at one point, at a party, and saying that, my art cannot be compromised. There is no room for compromise in art. And there's something to be said for the fact that, yeah, it's a failure, but it's a failure on their own terms.
Totally.
And they believed in it. And I'd say they learned from it, because the next record was a little bit more immediate. As for myself, I have this in the same position that you do. It's like third from the bottom. And my feelings are that I think Bastille Day is a classic. It's probably the classic of this album.
Yeah.
I Think I'm Going Bald. It doesn't fit.
No, it doesn't fit at all.
It would fit better with like Fly By Night or even the first album. But there's a couple of things I do like about it. And number one, I like that it's a folkloric song. This is about Alex being obsessed with his hair falling out and gaining weight. And so he's rubbing all of these mysterious products into his hair to try to save it. And you look at pictures of Alex in those days, I'm going to throw one up here, and he's got, a luscious head of hair. But it was just something he was really in his head about, like I'm going to lose my hair. I'm going to be overweight. So they write a song about that, a folkloric song, just to kind of entertain themselves. It won't be the last time they write a song about Alex, but I also like the lyric in this that Neil kind of slides in, because it's kind of like almost like CSNY, like I almost cut my hair kind of song, lyrically speaking. but then when you get to the last, I guess, verse when he says, "I'll go gray my way," and I feel that encapsulates Rush.
That's
We're
a
going to
good
do
point.
this on our own terms.
Yeah.
Even aging, we'll age on our own terms.
They certainly did, I think.
And they
continue
did
to do so. Yeah.
Yeah, so I like it. I like it for those two things. A song like Lakeside Park, I actually do really enjoy. I disagree with you in the band. I like the opening riff, the drum riff, and I kind of like the feel of it. I like some of the guitar tones that Alex used on it. You definitely do get the sense that they were smoking a little bit too much pot, as the band were saying, and maybe they were getting a little bit lost, like they were getting a little bit distracted. But the Necromancer is pretty tight as far as composition goes. I hear you on the narration being low in the mix. I believe that's Neil.
I think it's
doing
Neil,
that narration. And this is, of course, inspired by the band's obsession with J.R.R. Tolkien and The Lord of the Rings. The Necromancer is, of course, Tolkien's name for Sauron.
Yeah, it's early. It's when Sauron was in hiding.
Right, exactly. Which, if you've seen the Hobbit films, that's been worked back into the films, much to my annoyance. But
we can talk about that another day too.
We can talk about that another day. But
yes.
To me, the Necromancer is almost like Bytorn the Snow Dog, but without the humor.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit repetitive, but it's also, to me, like they're furthering that progressive direction. And maybe they got a little bit lost, and I think Lamneth is maybe the most emblematic of that getting lost in the weeds issue. And you didn't talk much about side 2, but for me, Fountain of Lamneth is like a solid first 10 minutes, and then it stops hanging together as a composition, and it just starts feeling like different songs put together, and they some of them don't even feel like they belong on the same album to me. But I really dig the Didax and Narpitz section.
I love that. Yeah. That drum solo is amazing. The crazy tom work is like, honestly, it's one of my favorite Neil moments on record.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the way it's produced is so cool. Like, it's almost like as he's like hitting the toms down the register, it's like phasing in and out. It's so cool.
And some heavy use of compression.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which, I think is kind of, experimental, but it's kind of ahead of the curve a little bit.
Yeah, it is, for sure.
To compress the drums that much, like that sort of thing wouldn't become popular until like the early 2000s.
Yeah, it's definitely ahead of its time. And I want to point out something you pointed out to me from Geddy Lee's book, that they were listening to a lot of Van de Graaff Generator, specifically, in particular, Pawn Hearts, and I can hear it so much in this piece. To now, it reminds me of the structure of the Plague of Lighthouse Keepers. It even has like that piece has some spaces in it, and so does Lamneth. I found that fascinating. Like the Didax and Narpitz is almost like it's totally not like this, but it's like their answer to that one really high climax in Lighthouse Keepers. I can't remember.
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's the where it gets really, really crazy.
Yep. There's a moment where they actually overdub themselves.
Yes.
Playing on top of them, and I'm talking about Van de Graaff Generator.
Yeah.
They overdub themselves like 10 times, and it's just
that's
chaos.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't want to be one within the water.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I totally get that, and that's something that I never knew. I saw Van de Graaff Generator the same year I saw Rush for the first time, and I never would have made that connection that Geddy loved them so much. But he mentions Van de Graaff Generator like they are gods to him. He must mention them like 6 times in his book, and I just didn't expect that. Camel too. That was another one. It's like,
yeah,
they did Camel. That's neat. Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to mention, you were talking about how much you love the cover art, and maybe I'll take some photos of the record and put it up. Put it up on Still Store, Cambot. But this is Hugh Syme. This is his first work with the band, and he would continue to do the band's artwork up through Clockwork Angels, which is absolutely incredible.
It is incredible.
It's like if Roger Dean had done every Yes album, and they were all different, like in terms of design work, like that. Just,
Yeah, it's mind blowing to me. Also, I think the only other thing I wanted to mention about Caress of Steel is that the back, like you said, the back like 8 or 9 minutes of Lambeth is pretty forgettable.
Mm-hmm.
It's just unfocused, and they would get a lot better at writing the longer songs after this record. Like you said, I think they like made this record, and then they learned a lot from it, and then they came back swinging with the next one, which we'll talk about
get to
later on. Yeah.
It's much higher on both of our lists, and
absolutely,
so it should be. But I wanted to mention that No One at the Bridge is probably my favorite section of this. Like the Good Axe and Arpits into No One at the Bridge. But Panacea is a really nice piece, and it kind of, to me, it reminds me of Halo Effect a little bit. If that's the one I'm thinking of, it kind of reminds me of Halo Effect from
Clockwork Angels, right?
Clockwork Angels.
Yep.
And the final song, The Fountain, is actually pretty nice. It's a pretty nice little melody, and it reappears. It's at the front of the composition, and it's at the end. So it's not necessarily that it's got bad music in it. It's just that it doesn't fit together for me. It feels too arbitrarily stitched. And they'll get better at that.
So again, with the artwork is the same person. This album and the previous album's artwork is, the same person is wild to me also. At number 16, I have Test for Echo.
Mm-hmm.
Apologies for the horrible glare. But yeah, Test for Echo is my number 16. I kind of really like this artwork. It's so, in a way, weird, right? Because it's like this like Easter Island-esque rock formation, and then there's the three guys are climbing it, but it looks like it's digital, but it kind of isn't. I can't really tell.
Yeah,
it's got that 90s feel to it.
It's a digital illustration, by the way.
It is a digital illustration.
Yes.
It's neato. It's got that like late 90s look, and look in the artwork. Here it is again.
Mm-hmm.
It has a real, I don't know, it's got that feel to it. It looks really nice, but it's got that late 90s feel to it, but it doesn't feel cheesy. It's really cool art.
And then you kind of have the signals kind of, that's coming back, that motif.
Yeah, it's receiving the signals.
And the 3 satellite dishes, again, the trio.
Yep.
That's a motif.
It's got all the motifs. It's great. This album surprised me also with its music. I always used to consider this one towards the bottom too, and it kind of still is, but I think it's stronger than its reputation. A lot of people don't like this record, from what I understand. I think it's a lot better than its reputation. I really like the sound of this album too. It's very muscular,
and
it's got a lot of heft and depth to the mix, which
that's Peter Collins. I think that's his production. Yep.
Yeah, it's great. I think it serves the material really well. It has like one of the best 1-2 punches in the catalog with Test for Echo and Driven. I just love both of those songs. They kick major butt, especially Geddy Lee's bass moments in Driven. I mean, forget it. That's classic Rush for me all the way. I really also like Half the World. That's a very strong song with some really important lyrics. It's got a lot of surprises. Like the Color of Right has some moments to it. Time and Motion is a really kick-ass song.
Oh yeah.
That sounds like classic Rush to me. It's almost like a more modern take on something from like Hold Your Fire, right? It has the similar kind of writing to me. I also think the drumming on this record is really tremendous.
Yes.
Like I said a little bit about Vapor Trails, Neil is trying some new stuff. He was taking lessons with jazz drummers at this point, and you can
Freddie
tell.
Gruber.
Yeah, with Freddie Gruber. Right? Yeah.
The Yoda of the drums.
Yes. And he really like invented how he plays the drums, and you can hear it in a lot of these drum parts.
Well, specifically, he said Freddie taught him how to play under the beat.
Yes.
He's always on top of the beat, but Freddie taught him how to play under the beat. And he said that they were listening to playbacks, the 3 guys, and they were like, well, we don't hear any difference in your drumming. But it wasn't until the other 2 guys had to try to play to it. This has shifted a little bit. Something's a little different. But I do get the sense that Neil, what it really gave him was the option to go for either feel, because sometimes he could still play the original, stuff the way that it originally was, like on tour and stuff, but it kind of gave him the option of a different kind of feel.
This album also has the song Virtuality, which is a really strong one, and I think points to the material to follow it. Even though Rush would disband for a few years after this album, I think Virtuality kind of looks to the future and the way that they wrote songs in the future, which I think is really cool to hear on this album. It's a surprise for me. And it also has another one of the best Rush songs, and that's Resist. Mm-hmm. Resist is an extremely moving song, especially to today's age. Yes. And it only gets better as an acoustic version too.
Yep. I agree with that. I was actually kind of impressed by the original version because I was so used to hearing the acoustic version. And I like Neil's drum part on this. And there's like some light and dark moments to it, and it almost puts me in the mind of a like a Jethro Tull song, because it's got like a folky lift, a lilt.
Yeah, totally. It's got a unique feel for the band, and I think that's really awesome. Like nothing really else kind of sounds like this in their discography.
Yeah, I agree. Now, my ranking, I placed this at the exact same spot you did.
Oh my gosh.
It's number 16 for me, which is a little scary. But see, when I was a kid, I got this for my birthday, and I didn't like the whole record back then. And so there were like a handful of songs that I just drilled into my head over and over again. Because when I was young, I didn't necessarily play the whole disc from front to back. I would just pick out my favorite songs and then move on. But I played Test for Echo a lot. I played Driven a lot, Half the World, Time and Motion. But Totem, that was a song that I just loved when I was a kid. Virtuality too. I really loved that one. And I never quite understood why people hate that song so much. Like they always say like it's going to be out of date, and I'm waiting for it. When's it out of date? Like people still meet on the internet, and they still have avatars on the internet. There are parts of themselves that they hide. There are parts of themselves that they emphasize on the internet because they have that safety. I think he was ahead of the curve a little bit with Virtuality.
That's a really great lyric.
It is.
It's really great.
And I love the whole net boy, net girl thing. Like it almost kind of reminds me of Presto, boys and girls together. Let's paint the mirror black. But that's the point I was going to make, is that in the Martin Popoff book, The Contents Under Pressure, he points out that this album is like a merger of the two Rupert Hine produced albums, which would be Presto and Roll the Bones, with Counterparts, which is a Peter Collins production. And it's much heavier and muscular and kind of grungy. But this is like an attempt to mix those worlds of kind of more pop songwriting with heavier stuff. And when it works, man, this album is great. And I kind of wish that I had a few more plays of it. These days, I wish I'd listened to it a little bit more, because it might be higher on my list a little bit.
I would agree with you, actually.
If I spend a little more time with it, I think it might be. But Driven, I think, is such an interesting song rhythmically. There's so many just like little jazzy moments in it. And this is, again, like picking up the theme of the open road, something that was explored with Red Barchetta back on Moving Pictures, and will be explored again with Ghost Rider on Vapor Trails. I love Half the World lyrically. Like that's a song that feels like it could have been written right now. I love it lyrically. There's something melodically about it that just doesn't quite connect. The Color of Right is a song that I don't remember much about at all.
It's fairly forgettable.
Yeah, but man, Time and Motion, that is like the Smashing Pumpkins but Rushified. It's like a proggier Smashing Pumpkins, and I adore that song. Dog Years is another one that's like a real miss for me.
Dog Years is one of my least favorite Rush songs. I think the lyric, it's like way too on the nose, like around the snout, right? I should say.
Well, Neil wrote it when he hung over.
Neil's lyrics are like almost always really eloquent and alliterative, but I don't know. These are way too nail on the head, and the song isn't that interesting. It's like a big miss, unfortunately, for me. Uh-oh. Hello?
Uh-oh. Okay, well, we'll just tell the folks at home in case we just magically switch places and there's nothing that I can do about it in editing that you have a rainstorm or something coming through, so your connection is hit or miss. But we're just gonna keep going, and we were talking about Test for Echo.
Yes.
And specifically why Dog Years is so disappointing. You know, if you ever see the show Cheers, you know, when he says it's a dog eat dog world and I'm wearing milk-bone underpants. Yeah. I feel like it was that kind of sentiment. And somewhere in Neil's Hangover, he kind of lost touch with the metaphor, and it just, like you said, it was too on the dog nose.
Yeah. And it just, I don't know, it just doesn't work as a song for me, or like it doesn't work well.
Yeah. About the only thing I like is the riff. The riff is cool.
It is cool. That song, and I think parts of the last couple, or the last two rather, are just kind of somewhat forgettable, honestly. Mm-hmm. Like I think that's the weak part of this album and why it's lower than most of the other ones. Everything else about it's got a lot good going for it. It's just that stuff is somewhat forgettable. Like Limbo is an instrumental, which is cool, and it's got some moments to it, but I can't really remember it. And the same with Carve Away the Stone. I could not sing you that song, unfortunately. I just don't remember how it goes.
Limbo is that one should please fans of King Crimson, because it's got a little moment that's like, you know, where Geddy's playing some really funky bass that kind of sounds like Tony Levin, and Neil's kind of got like a gamelan groove going on, and it sounds like maybe Alex like double tracked his guitar. And has like some interlocking stuff going on, but that brought a smile to my face. That song honestly comes across, and a lot of their instrumentals at times do, like it's just unused bits. Like, oh, let's just throw all these unused ideas together and see what happens. And sometimes it really works.
Yes.
This is, like you said, it's kind of forgettable. It's not the most memorable song.
I appreciate this album too for its somewhat brevity. Like this is like the beginning of the super long album era for everybody, right, in the late 90s. And, Rush will fall victim to that later. But right now they still like made this short enough. Like it's not like a, maximize the disc space album. It's
right. It's like got 50 minutes.
Yeah, it's like 50 minutes, which is a nice album length for a CD.
Mm-hmm.
And I, appreciate them for that.
Yeah.
It makes the record better.
It does, and when we're complaining about the length of the albums, there's a certain part of me that since Rush is done and there's not going to be any more Rush, it's like, well, I'm not going to complain about anything. I'm glad to have whatever we have. And
yeah, that's a good point.
Obviously, they weren't intended to be listened to, binged like we have been. Like you were supposed to. Like if you think about it, every year they might release an album that's 32 to 35 minutes long in the 70s and 80s. And then from like 97 on, they were releasing albums every 5 years or so, and they were like twice the length. So it kind of, if you think about it that way, it's sort of like if Moving Pictures and Permanent Waves were the same record. But at the same time, those albums individually are stronger than these longer.
Yeah, because they were made at the same time. Like all the material's written in the same stretch of time, I guess. I know you got a good point too, because it is Rush material after all, and we're blessed to have any of it. And these are also like albums. We're not hearing these for the first time either. Yeah. Right. These are all albums that we're like at least fairly familiar with, to like we've been listening to religiously since we were like 11 or 15 or something.
Yeah. In the case of Test for Echo, I've been hearing it for 30 years. So,
wow.
I mean, I got it when it first came out, so
there you go. 30 years later, huh?
Yeah. So what's your next one?
Yeah, so number 15 is the other album I do not own, and that is Rush's last album, and that is Clockwork Angels, with the really cool clock cover.
Yes.
And
you notice, if you calculate this, if you read this in military time, it's 21:12 o'clock.
That's awesome. That's really awesome.
Fun fact.
Yeah.
All right, I'm really fond of this album, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so this, for whatever reason, this is the other one I just never bought. I had a friend in college who had it and ripped me a copy, and then I just had the ripped copy, and I listened to it on my iPod. I had the iPod Classic, and I had that on there.
Music
works.
piracy is not a victimless crime.
I know. I wouldn't download a Bear, and I certainly wouldn't download this illegally, but I would borrow it from a friend. I probably will buy it at some point also, but just haven't gotten there yet, and I'm sorry to those victims. This album's neat because it's their only concept album, and it's their last album. I also, a fun little tidbit, I saw Rush one time, and it was during the Time Machine tour, which is pretty amazing. And they played Caravan and BU2B during that tour. I think those were the debut performances of that.
They were
that material. Yeah, and they were pretty great. Caravan especially I really liked. I still really like. I think Caravan's an amazing song.
Mm-hmm.
This album I'm just not as familiar with as a lot of the other stuff here, but it's this was the one that I saved for last for our binge here, because it's the last one, and it really does serve as a nice capstone to their amazing career. It is a nice summary and mission statement of everything that they're doing. It does a really good job of combining everything they've done before and put it into something new, which is a really awesome strength of this record to me. It also has some new twists and turns in there. There's some stuff that's straight up heavy metal in there, and there's new ways of doing stuff that they've been doing for a while. I think the only reason, besides the unfamiliarity, I think the main reason why it's lower on this ranking is because of the production. Again, I don't think it's bad, and it kind of serves the sound of the album, but it does, it's really compressed and it's thin, and it really, after a while, it bothers me, and also it makes all the dynamics suffer, because I don't really hear the strings at all until I wrote it in my notes, until halfway through the song, the records. That's when I first noticed the strings. Oh my gosh, there's a string orchestra in this album. I forgot about this.
Yeah.
I think that's the only really thing that stinks about it, because there's a lot of really strong stuff here. And again, it's length too. This album is a little long. But of the last three records, I think this is the one where the length is most forgivable, because the concept is really strong, and it ties together really well. There's great motifs through the whole thing. And I also really want to say there's two songs on here that are really amazing Rush songs. One is Headlong Flight. I think it's the best song on here. It absolutely smokes. Everything about it rules. I love it. And The Garden is a really special and beautiful song. I listened to that this morning actually, and I was starting to get a little teary eyed in the car. It's a beautiful song. It really is. That's the last song that Rush has recorded in the studio, or the last one on the album anyway. And it's just wonderful. Really emotional stuff for us fans.
It is. Well, I have lots to say about this record. It's a little bit higher on my personal list. I have it at 12, so it's not a lot higher. But I have it at 12, and I got to see this tour. This was the first and only Rush tour that I ever saw. And this material really did come to life on that tour, and that was a special experience for me to be in the same hall as these three giants of music. And not only giants of music, but people who influence the way I think about life and the world. To be there among them was really something special, and I don't think I quite realized how special it was until it was long over. But yeah, this material really does come to life live, and the concept is loose enough, kind of this steampunk idea where it's the future as envisioned by people living in the 1800s. So we're still powered by steamships, not electricity yet. And it's cyberpunk is those are the two sides of the coin. Steampunk is one side and cyberpunk is the opposite. But I really just feel like this whole steampunk aesthetic, the trappings of the story, is really just a vessel in which Neil talks about his life And you can see, like, if you read along with the story, and there is actually a book co-written by Kevin J. Anderson, which I haven't read, unfortunately, but there is a book that goes much more into detail. But my experience with the album and reading the little paragraphs that are included is that this is Neil's life. So like a song like Caravan, where he talks about working on the farm and waiting for the first caravan to pick him up and take him out into the wider world. I can easily draw a comparison between that and a young Neil Peart working the parts counter at his dad's store and waiting for a band to take him out and show him the world. You mentioned Headlong Flight, which to me is like that's the strongest song on the album, or at least the most memorable song. If I were to make a Rush best of, that's the tune I would pick, is what I'm saying. And that has a quote from Freddie Gruber, Neil Peart's drum instructor from the late 90s, where he says, "I wish I could live it all again." And that's not a sentiment that Neil shared, but it's a sentiment that he admired. And I love that there's those little bits of his life that are woven in. And there's some other songs, like I know the Wreckers really impressed me live because it's just like a very specific kind of ballad that Rush didn't do a whole lot of, but it's got that epic pounding of the strings behind it. I love the title track, Clockwork Angels, for its little journey that it takes you on. The Anarchist is just one of the baddest Rush songs ever made. And I think when I first wrote a review of this back in 2012, I said that I didn't like Wish Them Well, but now it's one of my favorites because I love the whole idea of, it's not a forgive and forget song, but it's definitely a forget song. It's like, just, it's like if somebody's grinding your gears, the best thing you can do is just wish them well and move on with one's life.
Yeah.
But I do feel like this is one of those albums where there isn't a bad song on it. Every song is excellent. There's nothing I would lose. If there's anything that makes me rank it at 12 and not in my top 10 or top 5, it's like you said, it's the production. And even the DVD, the Blu-ray of this show suffers from the same issues, where it's a better performance. You can hear the strings better, but it's still just oppressively loud. It's not painful. It's not vapor trails, but it is unpleasant. And the production is something that, specifically the mastering, is something that kind of puts me at odds with this record and makes me not play it as much as I probably would otherwise. But I think this is a great way to end their career. They left us wanting more. And isn't that so much better than saying that, oh, I'm tired of those guys? No, they left us like feeling like I kind of want to see them continue. So, obviously the end of Rush is a gut punch for a lot of us when the news of Neil's passing, finally was released to the media, and it does make a song like The Garden so bittersweet. So that's my thoughts on this album. I just for the sake of ranking, it's at number 12 for me, but it's truly one of my favorites of theirs, I think.
Yeah, it is a great one. And, the more I listen to it and understand it, the probably would rise up as well.
Yeah.
It's got more of an emotional heft to it than a lot of their other albums.
Yes.
Which is, a special thing unto itself. It's almost like, for me, a lot of the 80s albums have emotional weight to them. And I think Definitely. It has kind of the same kind of jazz, which I love about it as well. Yeah.
I think an important thing to mention that we didn't mention is that this was a return to Rush working the way that they used to work, which is they would get together and actually bang out the songs together in a room.
Right.
Starting with, I want to say either Grace Under Pressure or Power Windows, they demoed things. And that obviously makes the compositions come out quite a bit differently. And I think that with this one especially, you have a lot of ties to the late 70s and even mid 70s Rush records. Like there's a direct quote from Bastille Day in Headlong Flight, which is really cool. It's like that makes me happy. I like that.
Yeah, it's awesome.
All right, so we are at
number 14.
14.
Yeah. Man, these guys have a lot of albums, huh? Yeah. So number 14 for me is Snakes and Arrows. This is a somewhat personal one for me because this was the first Rush album that came out while I was a fan. I was not listening to Rush when in the 90s. I was too young. And I only got into Rush when I was in early high school. But I was in high school when this album came out. And I bought it soon after it came out. And I remember listening to it with, my uncles and my dad and, having a lot of good times with it. I think it's great. I think this is one of their most underrated albums because there's a lot of really cool and interesting stuff on here. Like, Rush is experimenting, but at the same time, they're also like really back. Like we said before, like Far Cry comes in like a, hello, this is like one of the best Rush songs, period. And
Hemispheres chord.
yeah. The Hemispheres chord is here and the whole song just rips. It has really great lyrics also too. One day I'm ahead of the wheel and next it's rolling over me. I can get back on. Get back on. Yeah, that's great.
That song was explosive. I mean, literally they fired off like
yeah, there was like crazy pyrotechnics going on.
Yeah, but that
awesome.
was they closed the first set on the show that I saw with that.
Oh, and that's awesome.
I was like just stunned by it. I was like, wow, I didn't know that song was that good. I always liked it, but that really worked for me.
Yeah, it's got, I think this album has some really tremendous lyrics from Neil. Across, like every song has great lyrics. Even like there's a couple songs that are just not as amazing as the other ones, but they have still good lyrics or great lyrics even. There's a lot to unpack here. Not just in the lyrics too, in the music. There's a lot to uncover. Yes. I think Alex Lifeson is also really shining on this record. He plays a few tremendous solos, and there's a lot of
playing differently too.
Yeah,
like,
it's
differently
really
than he
different.
ever did before.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like any other Rush record in terms of guitar playing, and all the acoustic stuff and the mandolin stuff is really something else on this album. It's tremendous. I think this is a really strong record overall. Really, and it also has 3 instrumentals, one of which may or may not count as an instrumental, more of a solo piece.
More of an interlude.
Yeah, it's like an interlude, but it's a really nice acoustic guitar piece, Hope. And you also have the main Monkey Business, which is just a mission statement of why Rush is so good at making instrumentals.
Yep.
It cooks, and it's got lots of interesting ideas and lots of good motifs as a songwriting standpoint. And then my favorite, is Malignant Narcissism, which is just a really, really awesome instrumental. And that was written last minute also, right?
Right. Yeah. There's usually one of those per album, where it's like, okay, gents, we're 3 minutes away from having a complete album length. Let's come up with something. And they just knock it out in like a day. And yeah, Malignant Narcissism was the piece on this, and that song in particular, or that piece in particular, has a real immediacy to it. But this is an album that when it came out, I didn't appreciate it that much. I thought it was kind of lackluster, but over time, and especially within the last year, it's risen the ranks, and I've played it quite a bit. And it's become one of my favorites. In fact, it is just outside my top 10 at number 11. I like this record for the same reason you do. It's very diverse musically. It's almost got like a folky through line through it that's very different for them.
Yes.
To point out like a song that I love Working Them Angels. Like it's like this blue collar factory town anthem. It's almost like Working Man again. But it's almost like a road song too. So it ties into to Driven and Red Barchetta and Ghost Rider. Like it feels like it's still part of that same strain of Neil's writing. A song that I love also is Spindrift.
Yeah, I love that
and
one too.
My story with this one is that when I was in high school, I was involved with the radio program, and I used to play my own music. Well, one day, an edict came down from the the higher ups, the teachers or whatever, saying that we cannot have kids bring in their own music anymore. They have to play the provided music on our CDs that we have. And as a matter of protest, they had Spindrift on one of those CDs, and I just played it on a loop. Every one of my shifts, I just played that song on a loop. and so now when I hear it, it's like, oh yeah, that was the song that I protested with. I think those guys would appreciate that. But yeah, Main Monkey Business, that's actually my favorite of the instrumentals on this. I love the song The Way the Wind Blows. That's another song that just feels so lyrically relevant to these times. And there's something comforting about the fact that, or maybe that's not even the right word, but there's something comforting about the fact that a lot of Neil's lyrics from like 1985 forward feel contemporary to me. But the other song I thought I would mention that we haven't discussed is Faithless.
I love that song.
Oh yeah, it's like this agnostic anthem. It's like you can call me faithless, but I believe in hope. I believe in the power of the goodness of human beings, and that's all I need. That's the only faith for me. Oh man, that's one of my favorites on this record.
This time listening, like big time.
Now this is an album that does suffer from being long.
Yeah,
it's like another like 67, 70 minute album. And by the time I get to the last couple of tracks, I'm a little bit worn out. It's one of those that the production is compressed, but it's not too bad.
Yeah, I don't think it's as offensive as the other ones are.
No, especially the two around it, Vapor Trails and Clockwork Angels. This is by far my favorite production-wise of the three. Even though maybe the material on Clockwork Angels is more consistent, I just find that this album is it's got more to discover, and I can hear it better. So for me, it's placed a little higher on my list.
The only reason I don't rank this album higher is there are a couple of songs that, like you said, the length kind of gets a little tiring. Like Armor and Sword could be a lot shorter. There's a couple of songs that are just okay. Like I'm not huge on Good News First, but it is such a weird song, and part of me is kind of glad it's here because it just, to me, sounds like nothing else that they've done. It's just completely bizarro world Rush. There's a couple other songs that could maybe be trimmed. I can't think of any on there, just by a few seconds, and it might make them a little stronger,
Yeah.
Other than that, this album's really great, and it deserves more attention because I feel like nobody talks about this album, at least on any discourse that I am aware of, and I think that's a huge mistake because it is a really great album with a lot of interesting and diverse material.
Yep.
There's nothing else quite like this one in the Rush catalog, and it deserves a place to be there.
Yep. For me, it's one of the more experimental ones, and one of the more diverse ones. Like it again, like it's almost like Tallish. With
it
some of those folky, and like the mandolins coming in spots. It almost feels like Alex introduced a whole new style to the guitar playing that we just never knew he could do. That bluesy, that folk blues sound. But the thing I wanted to mention was that we're now at number 14 on your list, and I should go back and say that my number 15 was Fly By Night, and my number 14 was actually Roll the Bones. And we will talk about them because they're higher on your list.
Yes.
But all things considered, let's move on to your number 13.
So my number 13 is Roll the Bones. This is an album that I really grew to appreciate over the last few years. For some reason, one of my other close friends, he is a big Rush fan like we are, and he loves this album. And look, this was like 5 or 6 years ago or something, but he's like, you got to hear Roll the Bones, man. It's great. I was like, I haven't heard this album in so long. And then I spun it and went, oh, it is great. Okay. There's a lot of fun material on here. I think this is maybe Rush's most poppy or accessible album in a lot of ways.
I would agree. Yep.
I think that lends strength to this album, quite frankly, because it's definitely different than everything else, but it's still got all the things that make Rush great. The first 3 songs are on, let's face it, they're classics. You have Dreamline, which is a banger, Bravado, which is one of their most beautiful ballads, and then Roll the Bones, which is a concert favorite. And yes, we both like the rap. The rap is great. And I learned that it's Geddy doing it, not Neil.
Although different resources say different things.
Really?
Yes. So, okay. The Contents Under Pressure book, the Martin Popoff book, Neil says he did it. In Getty's biography, My Effin' Life, he says that he did it. He said that they tried out different people. I think they even tried some hip hop people that they liked
Interesting.
to do it, and it just didn't fit with what they wanted.
Huh.
And so what they ended up using was Getty's guide track and pitching it down. I would like to, because obviously I have a studio at my fingertips. One of these days I'm going to sit down and try pitching that up and see if I can. Okay, that's Getty or that's Neil, but
that would be
Rupert
fun.
Hine, the producer, says that it's also Getty, but that they tried different people. So I'm wondering if Neil just remembers doing it, or remembered doing it, but didn't remember who's actually ended up on the album.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's like the Rashomon effect, where everybody remembers something just a little bit different. But anyway, sorry, we'll
no, you're good. It's this is the Rashomon effect. Truthfully,
the Rashomon.
Yeah, but you get Face Up. I think is a really fun song. It's just one of those that just it makes you happy. Like this album is a very happy Rush album, and I love that about it. I also really appreciate the awesome instrumental. Where's My Thing? That's a lot of fun.
Great live, by the way.
Yeah, it's kick-ass.
They did that on Clockwork Angels, and I was like, oh, that one's good. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's great. I also really love the Big Wheel, with especially that chorus, "Looking for love." It's so great, and it has one of my favorite deep cuts in the whole catalog, in "Ghost of a Chance."
Yeah,
which is a terrific relationship song. It also has one of my favorite Alex guitar solos as well. Ghost of a Chance rules. That's for me the highlight of the whole disc. I love that song. Yeah, it's strong.
Somehow we find one another. Yeah, through all that charade.
Exactly.
I love it. Love it.
Our entire lives are like happenstance.
Yep.
It's pretty amazing. The reason why this isn't higher is, I think start to get a little tired after a while. Like after Ghost of a Chance, like Neurotica is just okay, and I don't jive as well with You Bet Your Life either. It's just not my favorite closer. Rush, I'll talk about this more as we go on to some of my more favorite records, but they are the band that writes some of the best closing songs on their records. But I don't think You Bet Your Life is one of them, unfortunately. No. And those are it's
just not memorable.
No, it's not memorable. It has that like somewhat forgettable quality to it,
Yep.
But that's really about it. Like this is, I think, the beginning of like for me, this is the really good to great area of the discography.
Yeah.
This is like the little brother to Presto in some ways too.
Right. It's Presto side B, and even Rupert Hine, the producer, said that. In an interview that I read. Yep. My number 13 is Presto. But I had Roll the Bones at 14. So the band thought quite a lot of this record. Like they thought that Presto could have been better. And that they felt like they achieved what they wanted to with Presto on this one. I'm not sure I agree. I actually find that Presto is more rewarding over time.
Yeah, Presto's a lot better for me.
Yeah, despite the fact that the opening three songs, like you said, are classics. Bravado is one of those concert numbers that just took on a whole new life when they played that live, and they added sections to it, extended certain parts, and kind of jammed it. I really like that. It's one of those like all-time great Rush ballads. They always had a ballad on all their albums, but like Different Strings from Permanent Waves was like, to me, that was like the first, like, okay, they're really starting to go somewhere with these ballads. But I feel like this song is kind of a maturation of that idea. That started all the way back. Like even the first album, I think, has a ballad. But Roll the Bones, like I've always loved the rap in it. I've always thought that was a lot of fun. I never got offended by it like some of the fans did at the time. I always thought that was just Rush being fun and funky.
Yeah.
Where's My Thing is a great instrumental. It's not quite up to the level of Leave That Thing Alone, which would be on the follow-up, Counterparts. But this is another funky instrumental track that came to life for me when I saw it performed live on the Clockwork Angels tour. I actually find Face Up slightly forgettable. It's like kind of almost too generic for me. I love the Big Wheel. That one and Ghost of the Chance are like, very similar kinds of songs. And a song like Ghost of a Chance, again, I'm going to connect this back to Permanent Waves with like Inner New, like that whole relationship thread that maybe started back on Inner New is coming back. And by the way, it's going to come back again on Counterparts in a big way. Ghost of a Chance, I think, is one of the most memorable songs on this album. I love the sentiment. Neurotica, I actually disagree with you on Neurotica. I think it is kind of cool. I like the riff on it, and I like the wordplay. It's kind of hard to come up with things to say about this album, but I do enjoy it while it's on. I don't enjoy it as much as the next album.
Same.
Though. Actually, either album on either side of the chronology. And again, it's one of those albums that took me quite a while to get into, but it's got some merits. It's got some really strong songs on it. I know I'm rambling, but Dreamline, go and check out the version of Dreamline that was on the Clockwork Angels tour sometime, where they added the strings to it. It is epic. Oh my goodness. It's like hair on the back of your neck, chills stuff, with those string players on top. But I think I've exhausted all I want to say about this one. Yes. So we are moving on to your number 12. And I guess, we're now catching up. My number 12 is Clockwork Angels.
Oh, nice.
Your number 12 is?
My number 12 is Fly By Night Away From Here. Yeah, Fly By Night is my number 12. So this is one, I will also say this is one of my favorite album covers, period. I love the snowy owl on the cover here. It's just awesome. It kind of like, it also fits the music really well, strangely. This is, like we've alluded to before, this is the album where we think Rush really begins, and that's a large part because of Neil's presence. His spectacular drumming and his lyrics really elevate just about everything to another level. This album I originally had a little lower, but on re-listen, I realized, how much I still love this album. It's so much fun. It's got the energy of the first album, but all the songs are better. The songwriting really kicked into high gear here. You have Anthem, Beneath, Between, Behind, The Best I Can, Bytor and the Snow Dog, Making Memories. All of those songs are a blast to listen to. And you have In the End, which is, I think, the first really amazing Rush closing song.
Although Working great. Man, I think might take that.
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of forget that that's a closing song. I don't know. I just like Working Man is just a great song to me. I don't necessarily view it in the same headspace as finishing an album kind of thing. Right. But In the End really like puts the cap on this. It's a really well made record. I think. The only, I also should say that Bytor and the Snow Dog is the first long form song in the catalog.
Yeah, and it's the first prog song.
Yeah, it's really awesome. I have a special love for that tune, and also the live versions that are out there also are really amazing.
Yeah, All the World's a Stage is one of their best live records because it's absolutely. So raw.
But I think the only things about this album I'm not huge on are Rivendell. I love Tolkien. I'm a huge Tolkien fan myself, but the song doesn't really work for me. I don't know. It's just kind of like they're trying the ballad thing, and it's not really clicking yet. It's kind of pretty forgettable for me. And I like Fly By Night. I still do, but it's lower compared to the rest of the material on here for me. I don't know, something about it, I guess. I still love this album, right? This is I think maybe the first one on this ranking where I was like, all right, I love this album kind of thing.
This one's at number 15 for me. I have it quite a bit lower than you do. But just hearing you talk about it makes me wish that I had placed it higher, because when I was going back and listening to these albums, I think this is the one that surprised me the most.
Yeah.
With how much I enjoyed it. because it's like you put on Anthem and it's like, oh, they are here. They have arrived. This is confident. Neil's all over the skins. Like he's just sounds like an octopus.
Yeah.
He's moving so fast. And that like Anthem is one of those just signature Rush tunes that it's like you name Rush, and that's one of the songs like maybe like one in the first 5 that I'd think about. Best I Can. This is a song that was a leftover from the John Rutsey era, so it doesn't quite fit with the rest of the material, but it's fun. I love Beneath, Between, and Behind. That's like prog punk before prog punk was even a thing, because it's just punchy and it's wordy, but I love it. I love the way that Geddy delivers the lyrics on that. And he talks about how that was the first time that he ever edited any of Neil's lyrics, because he just looked at it and he's like, oh my God, how am I going to fit all of these words? The whole idea that we need a lyricist, because like on the first album, John Rutsey was writing the lyrics and he bailed on him. He took the lyrics and threw them up and tossed them in the fire, and he said they weren't any good. So Geddy and Alex had to write the lyrics last minute on that first album, and it shows. You can really tell that the lyrics are undercooked.
Yes, they are.
But here you have who's this lanky guy that reads all the time? What's his deal? Maybe he can write lyrics for us. He knows words. And Beneath, Between, and Behind being one of those like first really wordy literate Rush songs. And even Anthem, I mean that's of course very literate. We don't want to go down the On Rund.
No, we don't want to do that.
We don't want to go down that too far, other than to say that yes, that came from a book. Here's the band hyping up literature, not drugs and excess.
Yes.
But Bytor and the Snow Dog, I think, is the most important song in terms of the band's development, because here's the first cinematic Rush song where you can close your eyes and it plays a movie in your mind. And a lot of this has to do with Terry Brown's production. He was big in supporting their more cinematic goals. And there's like such creative ideas in this song, like Geddy's tuning down his bass to get that horrendous growl sound that he uses in the section where they're attacking one another. You also have, again, like another one of those key Rush tracks in the title track, Fly By Night. That's one that it's like immediately I think of Rush, and that's like, again, like within the top 5 songs that I probably would think of, along with songs like Tom Sawyer and Free Will and Spirit of Radio. Making Memories, that's a song that, it's a little bit naive, but I really like it. It maybe was fine-tuned a bit for 2112 with lessons. I actually do like Rivendell. I like the whole sentiment of peace of mind and sanctuary where the Dark Lord can't go. There's something that speaks to my soul, the escapist soul in me. But they definitely did perfect the ballad as we went forward. I mean, we were just talking about Bravado, and that's like peak Rush ballad. But I love In the End as a closer, and it works well for the All the World's a Stage album as well. But as we said, this is the beginning of Rush. The first album is historically important. But if I were to point to an alien from outer space and say, where does Rush begin? I would hand them this record. Your number 11. What's your number 11, Mike?
Yeah. So this, I think, is the section of my ranking where the controversy will begin. And my number 11 is the album Hemispheres, which we will show a nice picture of the iconic album art of Hemispheres.
Mine, by the way, is Snakes and Arrows, although I may have said that already, but my number 11 is Snakes and Arrows. So, Mike, tell us.
Right.
Tell us, why did you choose Hemispheres as your number 11?
Yeah, so I think the popular opinion is a lot of people have this as maybe their number 1 or close to number 1 Rush album. And I could see why. There's a lot to love about this album. There's a lot of great things going on. For me, I think like the opening of this album is amazing. The first 5 minutes of the title track Hemispheres rules. Some of the best music in the whole catalog. But then it starts to lose me a little with the whole story of the gods and the balance. It's like a game of Civilization. Like the video game. But I don't know, I don't find it that interesting until we get to towards the end, where you get to the I have memory and awareness, and like that I love. That's great. And it finishes pretty strong too. It's just not the most interesting epic, I think. The real strength for me of this album is side 2.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. For me, Circumstances is one of the great Rush songs. I adore this little song.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a deep cut, because this is a popular Rush record, I think, but it's still a really great song. And then, you get The Trees, which is a song that I don't love as much as I used to, but I mean, it's still Animal Farm for the plant kingdom. It's great. You can't go wrong. And then it ends with La Villa Strangiato, which is my favorite instrumental in the catalog. That's just an amazing tune. And the first Lifeson guitar solo in there is one of the best in the whole run of things. Lifeson rips on this. And it also has that iconic bass, little mini solo at the end too. I love every moment of this piece. La Villa is the highlight by far. By far,
yeah. I would agree with that. So I have Hemispheres a little bit higher. I have it at number 9. When Geddy Lee was talking about this album in his book, he said that every Rush album had that last minute song where it was like, we are 2 or 3 minutes under the runtime for a full album. We need to throw another song together at the very last minute, put it together in a day. And this has often produced some of their more exciting material, like, say, New World Man off the Signals record. But in this case, Geddy said that the entire Hemispheres album counts as a last minute track, because they had something like 2 weeks to write and rehearse this material, and then they went right into the studio to record it. And so it was like, this was put together, conceived and recorded and finished in like under a month or something like that. I mean, maybe the mixing and mastering went beyond that, but I think just the actual, like, from conception to tracking, it was like within a couple of weeks. And so as a consequence, Geddy was writing these vocal melodies without any concern for how they would be sung, and he was humming them. So, like, in his mind, he was singing them quietly. And a lot of times Rush wrote on acoustic guitars. So he was just kind of strumming and humming the vocals, and the guys were like, yeah, that sounds good. We like that. But when it came time to actually sing it, he and Terry Brown in the studio recording the vocals, it turned out that they were out of his range. And he had to push himself really, really hard. And it was a very frustrating and long, drawn-out vocal session. Like, he probably ended up spending more time on the vocals of this album than anything else. And as a result, I find his vocals to be rather strained on this album. And I had this memory, and I think I mentioned this in the prior video. I had this misconception that Geddy's voice was very harsh over the first couple of records, but I really think that comes from this album, because this is the only one where he's kind of hard to take for me at times. And it's really just side 1. Side 2, he's fine. But I agree with you that the first, like, maybe 10 minutes of Hemispheres is outstanding. It's like prog metal at its finest. And it kind of has lamnethitis for me. Like, it just kind of meanders, and it becomes less exciting. Now, the very end, like the last maybe 4 or 5 minutes of it, does manage to bring me back. And I like the little sweet short acoustic piece at the end, the one titled The Sphere. But overall, side 1 of this album doesn't hold together for me well enough to rank it higher. That being said, it's an album of 2 halves. It's like one foot is still in Farewell to Kings territory. The next is stepping toward Permanent Waves, in my opinion. So side 2, you have absolutely classic slab of music, in my opinion, and it saves the record. It makes it elevates it for me quite a bit. And like you said, Circumstances, that's a tune that I think would have fit, inner side A of Permanent Waves. very easily. It's already got that kind of new wave, very short, concise song feel to it. And lyrically, you're dealing with Neil's time in London, trying to make it big, playing drums, and how frustrated he was that he wasn't getting anywhere with it. But that song is like a minor classic. But then you have The Trees, which is one of their greatest songs. And I get it being overplayed, like you said, and maybe I don't like it as much as I used to either. But there's no denying that like it comes to life, like on Exit Stage Left and future live performances. But it truly is La Via Strangiato, a 10-minute journey into self-indulgence, as the liner notes suggest. And what I love about this is that this is another folkloric song. This comes from Alex Lifeson coming down, having breakfast with the guys on tour, and rambling about his dreams. And Alex would have these just epic cinematic dreams that were unlike anything. And I think it kind of bored Neil a little bit. Like, it's like, oh my God, somebody kill this guy. But it entertained them enough to write this surrealistic journey. And to me, that's more interesting. A song about Alex's dreams is far more interesting than anything thematically or story-wise happening in side one. I definitely agree. I definitely agree that this is a classic Rush record, but side two is that's really the meat.
Yeah, I agree. You kind of pointed this out as we were listening to these, that this is really a transition record.
It is.
I never really thought of it that way, because it is such a classic progressive album, but it totally is a transitional album.
Yeah.
They really point towards Permanent Waves.
Yes. Now, I don't think the band would agree. I think, Geddy Lee and the guys probably felt that Moving Pictures was the album that they were heading towards. But,
yes,
as we'll get further on in our ranking, I don't agree with that. I actually think that they're pretty fully formed and established by Permanent Waves.
Yeah.
And I kind of hear Moving Pictures as an extension of that. More than anything, but we'll get to Permanent Waves hopefully a little while later.
Yes, we will later for sure.
As a hint to our ranking, we'll get to it a little while later.
Well, if you haven't guessed, because we haven't talked about it yet, so
we are entering our top 10.
Yeah, here is the top 10. I think we've gone through this is the halfway point, really.
Yeah, this is kind of for me where every album is just practically flawless.
Yeah, me too.
It's from here on out.
Near amazing for every album going forward.
Yep. And our number 9s and our number 10s are really close, but my choice for number 10 was 2112, and your choice was?
My choice for number 10 was Hold Your Fire. Hold Your Fire from 1987. Mm-hmm. I really love this album. This is the one I think that continues to surprise me every time I hear it, and it gets better every time I hear it also. This really clicked big time for me about 6 or so years ago, and man, I just can't get enough every time I hear it. I love that artwork also.
I do too.
The juggling dude, it's great.
Yep, I used to stare at that as a kid all the time. Just like, what's going on there?
Yeah, me too. Like in high school, I got the replay DVD set with the Exit Stage Left video, the Grace Under Pressure, and then the Show of Hands, and that's also in the Show of Hands video.
That's right.
Yeah, that tour was smoking also.
Mm-hmm.
That was
one
my
of their
favorite
best.
Part of that is the Show of Hands.
Yep, one of their best.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, this album, I think, I can say a lot about this. So this may be one of the best Rush albums in terms of lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
The lyrics are consistently incredible. Neil is firing on all cylinders with the writing here. It's just amazing and really impactful still today. His lyrics are kind of timeless.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorites in particular is the song Open Secrets.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a gorgeous song. I was looking out the window. I should have looked at your face instead.
Looked at your face instead. Yeah.
It says so much.
It does.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and the song Prime Mover has been stuck in my head like crazy the last 3 or 4 days.
That song really slaps.
So this album is very close for me in ranking, and it is my number. Wait a minute. No, it's not. I got confused again. It's number 8. It's number 8. So we continue to be like within 2 or 3 slots of one another. But what I wanted to point out about this is that Neil Peart talked about these two albums, this one and Power Windows, as being like a duology, a left and right, sort of in the same way that Farewell to Kings and Hemispheres was. And a lot of that has to do with the production of Peter Collins, who entered with the Power Windows album and continued to produce the band for this album, and then later on Test for Echo and Counterparts. But Neil says in Martin Popoff's book, Contents Under Pressure, that Power Windows is the extrovert album and Hold Your Fire is the introvert album. And I totally get that reading. He also says that if he were approaching Rush as a fan, this would have been one of his favorite albums, because there is so much deliciousness in the arrangements to dig into. There's constantly things that are surprising you. But for me, what stands out about this album is, like you said, the songwriting. And, sometimes there are Rush songs where the lyrics are just fantastic and the music is like, it's not quite as good as the lyrics. But I think for the most part, until you get to the last two songs, this album, the music and the lyrics really work well together. Let me just point to a song like Force 10, which is has the power to immediately get me hyped up. Time Stands Still is, such a, to me, this whole era was about, Rush had done progressive rock. They had done heavy metal. They had done hard rock. They experimented with reggae. And this was about all those influences coming together. And now it's synthesized and it's just Rush. And both this and Power Windows are like that. And we will talk more about Power Windows. I don't want to give away too much. But like you said, Open Secrets is great. Prime Mover is one that it's a sleeper. It'll sneak up on you. Lock and Key. But the one that stands out to me as being the absolute classic, aside from Force 10, is probably Mission. And this is hand in hand with my favorite Rush song of all time, which is Marathon, because both of these songs are kind of about the idea of, I think they must have visited like a sports hall of fame or something like that, and then just been really inspired by the sacrifices that people have to make to be excellent at their careers. And you can certainly, you can very easily draw a parallel between, that sort of thing, the marathon or following the mission in one's heart, to being in a rock band and going out there and playing shows and paying your dues and being able to make, music for people as a living. I think this is one of the quintessential Rush tracks, and it's one of those albums that I didn't used to like it because it was so different from what had come before, but now it's absolutely one of my favorites. And it just reveals so much of what I love about this band. Again, Turn the Page, that's another outstanding track. It's not until you get to the last two, the Tyshawn and the High Water, that it kind of feels like, well, that's good, but it's not Rush. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it doesn't
that's
fit.
The reason why it's as low as it is, because quite honestly, the songwriting on this album is the highlight. And I would, if it wasn't for Tyshawn and High Water, this would be way higher on my ranking, maybe in the top 5 even.
Yeah, same here.
High Water is, I think, one of the most baffling and forgettable closers in the catalog. I don't know what it is about it, but it is so unmemorable. Mm-hmm. Tyshawn I kind of like, but it just doesn't work. I know the band really hates it. Also, it's it's an experiment, but it doesn't quite work.
Right.
But, everything else is just so amazing. I also really want to point out how important Second Nature is.
Mm-hmm.
Also, that is an incredibly gorgeous song, especially to me. It has some of the most potent and important lyrics in the catalog, too. It's a really amazing song about climate impact. And also fighting the powers that be.
That's right.
General.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of my favorite music envelops this both happy yet sad feeling. And I think Second Nature also captures that. And it's one of my favorite Rush songs, just like Mission is also.
Yeah. And this one's almost like a precursor to a song like Red Tide.
It is. Yeah.
On Presto. But I love this, this line. We fight the fire while we're feeding the flames.
Yeah.
That's just so insightful.
Yeah, it's so great. Like, the album's full of amazing lines like that. Love this record. This needs more. This is another one of those Rush albums that needs more people to give it a chance because
I
it's
agree.
so dang terrific.
Yeah, and I think that there's like two kinds of Rush classics. There's the classics that are embraced by the wider public, like say Moving Pictures, and then there's the classics that are fan favorites. And I think Power Windows and Hold Your Fire kind of fit more into that latter category, where the believers know that these albums are great.
Yeah.
The faithful know that they're amazing.
And this is also an amazing record for Geddy Lee in particular too. His bass parts on this are stupendous.
Yes.
Like Time Stands Still, the song is terrific, and I think is some of Neil's best drum parts. It's just perfectly complements the song. It's unbelievable. Like beautiful drum parts. It's so musical.
Well, it's a very important song for me in the same way that Mission is, because I have always been obsessed by the idea of capturing moments. And that's why I love the recorded arts. Because I've always wanted to capture a moment and live in it, at will, to go back to it. And so that's why I loved recording music. That's why I love photography. That's why I love film. And so this song, that sentiment, Time Stands Still, I'm not looking back, but I want to look around me now. The idea that time is constantly marching forward, and we should all just take a moment and live in the moment, and look around and capture this, remember it. Yeah, I love it, and I think Geddy's singing is at its best.
Oh yeah,
for the next string of albums, like from here through probably maybe Vapor Trails, like his singing is at its absolute best.
Yeah, this is a zenith for sure.
That's the word.
Zenith, yeah.
Zenith.
Also a good Rush title if there was one.
Yes.
Give it another spin, y'all. It's so great.
Hey.
Number nine.
We always do that.
Yes, we have to.
So my number 9 is Hemispheres.
Yes.
And this is like we're so close for a lot of these. But your number 9 is...
My number 9 is 2112. One of their, in my opinion, one of their quintessential albums.
Yes.
This is probably the earliest of the core collection, I guess you would call it, TM, of the Rush catalog. I haven't, until our binge here, I haven't heard the album in full in many years for whatever reason. I don't know. I tend, in the past couple of years, gravitate towards the 80s and 90s Rush because that's now my favorite Rush. But this was so much fun on a revisit. 2112 is, for me, the best epic Rush piece. It's, really well constructed. All the movements are great. They're cohesive. The story's cohesive. The playing kicks butt. It's just got it all. It's one of their best pieces, period. And side 2 also has fire. A lot more fire than I remembered, quite frankly. Side 2 is a big surprise for me.
And it also has kimonos.
It does have kimonos, yes. And that is a big one, too.
That's a big part of it.
Yeah, like even something that's quote unquote could be viewed as like a silly song, like a Passage to Bangkok is essentially about weed, and The Twilight Zone is about a TV show. They work really well, and they both have killer guitar solos in them. Like Alex is on fire. I love it. And Lessons is like Making Memories but better from Fly By Night. And you get Something for Nothing, which is another quintessential closing song. I like Tears also, but it's definitely my least favorite song on here. That song really surprises me because it's so unlike anything else. It sounds like it's off of King Crimson's In the Wake of Poseidon.
It does, yes. And even like when I noticed on this most recent listen that even Neil's drumming is like, oh man, the drummer's name, it's escaping me right now. Michael Giles, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Because he only plays on the choruses, I think. He sits out on the verses.
Yeah, there's no
drums. He just comes in. And there's just like a little bit of a like a little drag of the snare that's just right out of Michael Giles playing. It's really something special in their catalog, I think. This was the protest album. This was an act of defiance.
Yes.
Because they had presented Caressive Steel to their label and fans, and they got a lot of, no, none of this. We don't want this. We want you to conform. And I feel like there are parallels between that presentation to the song presentation, where it's set in a dystopian future. I don't know if it's this world or another world, but essentially a man has found a guitar in a cave, and he presents it to the elders and says, look at this amazing thing that I found. Look what wonderful gift to humanity that this is. And they say, no, that's nothing new to us. It's just a waste of time. We don't have any need for that. Get rid of it. Conform. Go back to what, normal things. And, you can hear them raging against that, that mediocrity throughout this album. And that's a lot of what fuels this little rock opera suite. And the other thing to mention is that classical music is a big part of this. This is the beginnings to me of a three-piece orchestra. Like Rush is this three-piece orchestra, and that is a motif that carries on through every single album, even up through Clockwork Angels, where they have a literal orchestra, even on Power Windows, where they have a literal orchestra and choir backing them up on a few songs. But here it's just them, and it's like I think it's genius, the idea of taking little bits and pieces from each of the parts of the suite and then tying them together to make an overture. And then somebody says, oh, it's like the 1812 overture. And so we get a quote from the 1812 overture, even with the cannons and stuff. Like, it's just really, really smart, rock orchestra music. And great histrionic vocals that once again put me in mind of Peter Hamill and the Pawn Hearts album. And then when you get to side two, like you said, this was side two, I think, was the part that surprised me the most at how much I enjoyed it. Passage to Bangkok, I think, is a wonderful song. And it comes to life on Exit Stage Left, especially. But I love the imagery of, stopping at all the little important cannabis ports along the way to refuel. And perhaps they refueled a few times too many on the previous album, Caressive Steel.
Yes, they're recanting their travels.
Yeah, yes, they're recounting the travels of Caressive Steel era. But the Twilight Zone, here's a song that's about pop culture. This was their favorite show, and this was a show that each one of them grew up watching. And then when they were on tour together, they would watch it together in hotel rooms and on the bus. And it was like kind of an inside joke among the band. Whenever something really weird or unfortunate or what have you would happen while they were on tour, they would say, "Well, this must be written by Rod Serling. This is something straight out of the Twilight Zone." And then, like you said, Lessons is a very strong track. I think this is an Alex Lifeson penned music and lyrics. Tears is Geddy Lee. That's his song, both music and lyrics. And then, like you said, Something for Nothing, which does borderline on preachy, but it's still a good sentiment. Yes. You gotta fight for your freedom. And I just, I love it. And this whole album, I think, is about fighting for freedom, because how many times in history can you think of where a band defied the record label and doubled down on their belief system and won their freedom out of it? Because from this album forward, they could do whatever they want. They had no interference.
Yeah, this was their breakout, more or less.
Yeah. And that's why it's maybe one of the most important Rush albums, and maybe it should be higher on our lists than what it is. But in terms of favorites, like, I just feel like there's ones I like a little bit better or a little bit more consistent.
Yeah.
Like, this opened the door to so many wonderful things. But it definitely does need to be acknowledged what an incredible record this is.
Yes. And also, I should note too, for personally, the discovery and presentation movements are two of my favorite things in the whole catalog. Just amazing. And the version of 2112 on different stages, the live album, is the best one. It is.
Yeah, it is. And I actually like, there's a version from Toronto from that tour that I like just a little bit better.
Oh, really?
There's video of it on YouTube. You can check it out. But when they do grand finale, it must have been because they were playing for a home crowd. but they kick up the tempo, and it sounds like avant-garde.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like it sounds like they could have been on Cuneiform Records.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And it's just like, my God, what an onslaught. But if you ever have a chance, you should definitely check that out. But I was going to mention that I'm also a big fan of Soliloquy when you talk about the histrionic side of Rush. I really like that. And then,
it is kind of Vandegraaff, isn't it? It
is.
I didn't put that together, but it really is a lot like Hamill.
Mm-hmm. All right. Was there anything else you wanted to say about 2112?
Where does this album rank for you? Because I think we've been doing, I say where it is, and then you say where it is.
Yes, I did not say
2112 on yours.
It's number 10 for me, so it just cracks my top 10.
Great. We've like flip-flopped a little.
Yeah, but we're still like, I think there's only one album that isn't consistent among our top 10, and it'll be really interesting to talk about that when we get there.
Yeah, it's one that I'm very excited to talk about because it's one that I've championed for a long time.
My number 8 is Hold Your Fire, which we already talked about. That might be controversial that I say that I prefer Hold Your Fire to 2112 and Hemispheres. I thought you can see the spine. I actually listened to all three of those records in a row one day, and it shocked me how much I enjoyed Hold Your Fire. And it was right, like I played 2112 right before that, and I was like, oh my goodness.
I almost put Hold Your Fire above both of those, just like you did, and maybe even the next one, but I decided not because I think the last two tracks on that album weigh it down a little bit for me. Like if it didn't have those last two tracks, it would be in the top 5 without question.
My reasoning for ranking Hold Your Fire above those two is that it's a 50-minute album, and those two tracks only account for 10 minutes of it. And so there's 40 minutes of it. That's longer. That's longer than 2112 and Hemispheres are individually. So there's enough great music on there, I think, to justify it. Even if I turn off the player for the last two songs, like it's still a sufficient amount of Rush music for me.
Yeah, that's true. Oh man, maybe it goes higher for me too. Well, it's locked in, so
it's locked in. Can't change. So tell us about your number 8.
Yeah, so my number 8 is A Farewell to Kings.
This good sentiment, if I ever heard one.
Yes. Bye-bye, Kings. Get out of here.
Cut your strings, Kings.
Yeah, cut the strings, Kings. Yeah, so, for years and years, this was my all-time favorite Rush album. Like, without question, unbroken, number 1. But that was many years ago. I was a young person, and I don't feel that way anymore. I still think it's a terrific album.
Now you're old.
Yeah, I'm old and begrudged, I guess. No. I still love this record. It's just I like other ones a lot better now. I think this is, especially based on the placement, I think this is the most consistent of the 70s Rush albums. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, the best one.
I would concur.
It's smoking. The band is coming hot off the heels of their breakthrough of 2112. They're inspired. They give the freedom to do what they want, and they really lean into the prog. This is maybe their proggiest album. Also, this and the next one, Hemispheres. Going track by track. The title track is a great song. I think it's better live, but it's still a great way to open this record. I love the acoustic intro. It's awesome. And you got Xanadu, which is an iconic song, man. Xanadu is beautiful.
Equally Kubla Khan influenced, and Citizen Kane, which is interesting.
That's so interesting. Yeah, it's a classic Rush song. You can't get much better than Xanadu. That's like their 10-minute epic, quintessentially in a nutshell. Everything is great about that song. Mm-hmm. Then you get one of their biggest songs, Closer to the Heart, which I love. I think it's a well-deserved classic and big hit. Mm-hmm. And honestly, it doesn't get old for me. They play it a million times live, but it always sounds great.
Well, they always added to it.
Yeah, they build upon it, which is even better.
Especially like around the Presto tour. I think are some of the best versions of that song.
Oh, for sure. So side 2 used to be my favorite. Now I'm not so sure, but it has the 4th track, Cinderella Man, is one of my favorite Rush songs. I just love it to pieces. It's like Circumstances for me. It's like a lesser known of the 70s tunes, but it just smokes almost all the other ones. I love the lyrics. I love the opening riff. Cinderella Man's great. I also should say this album is very nostalgic for me because it was my favorite for so long. Like I have memories of listening, particularly on my Sony Discman, to this album like on repeat, and like driving around with my family going shopping and stuff, and just like hearing Cinderella Man and picturing like all the shopping malls and jazz that we were going to. Like, so it was a great time.
Subdivisions,
yes. Subdivisions of the heart, for sure. I think the only tune I'm not super keen on is Madrigal. I like it, but it's just okay. It doesn't really go anywhere too much. I like it. It sounds nice, but it's not really that memorable. But Cygnus X1 is also a great 10-minute tune. I think it was a smart choice for this album too, to have two quote unquote mini epics than like one full blown blast of music. I think it makes for much more concise and stronger music. For years, Cygnus X1 was my favorite Rush song. It's not anymore, but I still think it's terrific. I love all of the spacey effects. It really adds to the atmosphere of like, you really can picture him flying through space and then getting sucked into a black hole. That ending is awesome. Still, Geddy's wailing scream works so well for this.
And those dissonant kind of unresolved chords that do reappear in book 2, by the way. I never picked up on that before, but that motif reappears in book 2. When I listened to this, I noticed how that ending is so ambiguous. It's like a big question mark, and I thought, oh, this is Rod Serling. This is the Twilight Zone.
The Twilight Zone. Yeah, I love it. It's just really good storytelling. Like, they've really gotten a good handle on telling a story with these albums. And like with Xanadu also, you can get the picture of them going to see the river raft and walk the caves of ice into paradise. It's terrific. It's just terrific Rush music. What more can you ask for?
This is my number 6. This is my favorite album, Rush album of the 70s too. I kind of think it stands head and shoulders above the rest because it's a little less hard rock, heavy metal. It's still there, especially Cygnus X1, which is kind of like the Necromancer a little bit. It's like the better version of the Necromancer for me. But this definitely has the prog sophistication beginning to take hold. And I think that Rush, that sophistication of Rush is something that would continue to grow. And they would get more complex, more sophisticated throughout the 80s and better part of the 90s as well. But yeah, for me, Xanadu is the all-time classic on this album. It's the cinematic Rush that started way back on By Tor and the Snow Dog, where you can just close your eyes and there's a movie in your mind. This is the first of the albums that they recorded at Rockfield. It's rural. It's like off the beaten path, and they can just kind of go out and there's the beautiful lake and the trees, and they can hear the birds when they go to record, and the sheep. They're in isolation. They're cut off. They're in the countryside, and it's just a beautiful backdrop, picturesque backdrop. For creativity. Also, the new Opeth album was recorded there.
Yes,
the Last
it was.
Will and Testament.
Which is amazing.
So if you watch that documentary that's included with that album, and it is amazing, look for my review on this channel because I did talk about it. You can get an idea of where Rush recorded this album if you watch that documentary. But you can hear this in the opening moments of the record where Alex has a microphone set up and he's walking back and forth playing that acoustic guitar opening, and you can hear the birds kind of in the background because they actually recorded that on the lake. And you can also hear it in the trees as well on Hemispheres, because Hemispheres was recorded at that same studio. But yeah, Closer to the Heart, this is one of those songs that's a classic for a reason. And when they, there's that moment where you hear the tubular bells come in, and that I just love that because that was all about pulling it off live because Alex had to switch from acoustic to electric. So they put that little moment in there, but it's like the most iconic moment. It's like the most memorable thing in the whole song to me. But it just all kind of builds into this big solo, and you can really hear, I think, Rush coming into their own. We are comfortable, we are confident, we've had success. Now look at what we're going to do with it. Like you, I also adore Cinderella Man. I think Circumstances is a little bit better, but I do love this song. Madrigal is the only weak spot. It's a little naive, and I think that it's the kind of song that they would really perfect in about 2 records. With a song called Different Strings. That's where Madrigal is heading. And I think that song is a little masterpiece, by the way, but we'll talk about that in a little while. But yeah, again, Cygnus X1 is, again, the return of the cinematic storytelling side of the band that I love so much. And it's heavy. It's the most intense thing on the record by far. But yeah, this is a great album. And just us talking about it here today, I think I want to go put it on when we're done here, because it's been like about a week and a half
I was thinking about
since the last time I heard it. And this is just, you can't go wrong with this album.
Yeah, it sounds great. Also,
it also sounds great.
Yeah,
Terry Brown was the right choice for that band, and he really steered them well, I think, in that first decade.
Oh yeah, 100%. Just a crop of great sounding albums.
Yeah, and I guess this is a moment for a Terry Brown appreciation, but I read an interview with him in the Clockwork Angels edition of Classic Rock Magazine, which when it came out in 2012 included a copy of the album with it. And I was given that by the publisher because I wrote them and complained that they didn't cover Nearfest. And so they sent me a copy of the magazine to shut me up. And I still have this thing, and I read through it in preparation. And there is an album by album feature where they interviewed both Terry Brown and Peter Collins. And Terry Brown says that the reason why he loved working with Rush is that he always felt that rock music could have meaning, and he wanted to make rock music that had meaning and substance to it. So he was absolutely the perfect producer for them.
Amazing.
For the first 10 years or so.
Yeah, that's amazing. We love it.
Good segue, because we're about to talk about the one where they didn't work with Terry Brown.
Yes, my number 7 album, ladies and gentlemen, is Grace Under Pressure from 1984.
And mine, by the way, is Counterparts. My number 7 is Counterparts. I actually had I have Grace Under Pressure at number 4. So
nice.
I obviously think quite a lot of this record. But tell me what you think.
Yeah, I mean, so do I. This is like, we're at the point now where every album is just amazing. Truthfully, like this is the part of the ranking where it's like, man, this is so hard to rank because all of these albums are great. And like we've alluded, this album was produced with Rush and Peter Henderson, not Terry Brown. Mm-hmm. This is, I think, the first one without Terry, right?
Mm-hmm. And there's some drama with that, but we'll get to it.
But yeah, this album is awesome. It's really dark also. This is maybe one of their darkest albums, and it's great for that. They totally, at this point, lean into the synthesizer sounds, and I think it works really great and adds a lot of sound palettes and texture to their songs. I think this is also, continuing from the last couple records, their songwriting is really firing off. Like from a songwriter's perspective, it is an amazing batch of songs. There really isn't a weak one in the bunch. I think maybe the Body Electric and Red Lenses are less good, but they're still really enjoyable songs.
I adore them.
Yeah,
I adore both of them.
The Body Electric chorus is so much fun with the binary.
Yeah, they played that on Clockwork Angels tour when I saw them, and they dropped it after like a month or so. So my head exploded. It was like David Cronenberg's Scanners when they played that. It was just like, oh my God,
that's incredible.
Play the Body Electric.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the Distant Early Warning is one of those classic Rush songs. Also, it's a kick butt opening song too.
You need really someone to talk to and someone to sweep the floors.
Yeah. Incomplete. Yeah, it's great. It sets the tone for this record so well too. And I think there's 2 really special deep cuts on this album. They are Between the Wheels and Kid Gloves. Kid Gloves is a top 5 Rush song for me. I just absolutely love this song. I'm not quite sure exactly what it is about it, but that the opening riff, the lyrics, it's just, for me, it's got it all. It's got an amazing Alex Lifeson guitar solo in it too. If you guys couldn't tell, I'm a big fan of his soloing. He's a tremendous soloist, and he writes out all of his solos, and they're something special. Yeah. I'm pretty sure he writes out the solos and doesn't just improvise them on spot. Which is really interesting approach. I don't know anybody else who really does that.
They did a tour in between Signals and Grace Under Pressure because I think they took some time off. Remember, Signals was 82. Yeah. And this was 84. So they did a little warm up tour prior to recording this album. And I can't remember which exactly songs that they played off of this, but Red Sector A was one of the songs that they played. And I just listened to it the other day, just kind of when I was waking up. And Alex's solo was completely different.
Oh, wow.
Like it was more unhinged. It was interesting to hear, because obviously the version that we get on the album seems very constructed to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's composed, which is neat. That's cool. I got to check that out. I also love another live cut that really comes alive from this album is The Enemy Within.
Mm-hmm.
That song's amazing. It's another one of those like amp up Rush songs.
And it looks like we may do the Fear trilogy in order, because this is part 3. Although we did part 4 way back on Vapor Trails.
It does go in order. Spoiler alert for some people, but
we'll get there.
Yeah, well, it goes in order here because you don't. Like, Freeze is the 4th part, and it doesn't go in order. But Enemy Within is part 1.
That's right. Yeah. Enemy Within is part 1.
It was released last of the original 3, but it's the part 1.
Right.
And then part 2 is The Weapon, and part 3 is Witch Hunt. It's kind of. I think it's a neat idea to release. Or maybe, I don't know what order they were actually written, but it's interesting to me to release a suite like that and have the parts come out and be recorded in order backwards.
I don't know if somebody told me this or if I read this, so take it with a grain of salt, but I think I read or heard that the Fear trilogy was presented as here's, Neil gave Geddy 3 sets of lyrics, and okay, here's part 1 of Fear, here's part 2, here's part 3, and they just adapted them in reverse order. So they did Witch Hunt on the Moving Pictures album, but I think that those lyrics all were written back in like 81 or so.
Wow,
but
awesome.
I could be completely wrong about that, and I'm sure somebody in the comments is. If I'm wrong, they're tearing their hair out right now, and they are just chomping at the bit to tell me. And please do, but please be respectful, because don't hurt our feelings.
Yeah, we're millennials. We have we're sensitive here.
We're trying.
We're trying, exactly. Yeah, we're trying our best here. But yeah, this is such a great album, and this is in like a stretch of such an amazing run of albums, like from 2112 to Counterparts to me is like, holy crap, what a stretch of records, especially Permanent Waves to that point for me is like just magic, constantly magic. There's always like this album too exemplifies like there's always new things to discover. There's a ton of surprises on this record. It's very diverse. It's a really powerful album to listen to.
I love every song on this album, and like Red Sector A, when I saw that one played live on Clockwork Angels tour, and knowing what it's about too, it just, I found it such an emotionally moving experience. And I remember reading in Geddy's book where he talked about his lighting director knowing what colored lights would elicit such emotions from humans. He employed that knowledge in the choices of lighting for Rush's shows over the years, and I can attest that there's truth to that, because oh boy, was there a feeling with this song, seeing it live on that tour. I also am a big fan of Between the Wheels, and I think that aside from maybe Vital Signs, this might be my favorite Rush closer. We aren't ranking the Rush closers, but this song is a piece of work. But what I was going to mention about this album that I think is interesting is that this is the first Rush album not to be produced by Terry Brown. And there was a lot of reasons for that. The story that I've read is that Terry Brown didn't like the direction that Rush were heading in, and he felt that they weren't Rush anymore. He felt that they were losing their identity, doing all this reggae stuff and all these, adding more keyboards and getting away from hard rock. And so they just kind of decided that, well, hey, maybe we should, see other people kind of thing. And so there was a lot of people that they approached to produce Grace Under Pressure, including Steve Lillywhite, who apparently ghosted them. And like within 2 weeks of he was supposed to produce them. Now, Steve Lillywhite worked on English Settlement. And I, if I'm not mistaken, I think also Drums and Wires and Black Sea.
I think so.
Like he produced U2, I think later on. I could be wrong about that, but he's a very famous producer, but he basically bailed on Rush to produce Simple Minds. And that's a grudge that Geddy holds to this day. Like, he hates him for that. And he does not mince words. Man, when Geddy doesn't like somebody, he lets you know. But he like called him unprofessional and all this stuff. But Peter Henderson ended up not being a great producer for the band. And the main reason for this is that he was indecisive. And they just produced millions of versions of the songs. Okay, maybe not millions, but there was just like mix after mix after mix of just small variations, and it drove Geddy nuts. And it ended up being that the band more or less produced this album themselves. And I feel like this album is a bit of a step back in terms of production as a result. It doesn't quite sound as good as Signals, or for that matter, it doesn't sound as good as Power Windows, in my opinion. But it still is a great, heavy, dark Rush album that, you do feel like the presence of the hard rock guitars are back here, where they've been missing from the Signals album. And it does feel more like Rush as an identity. So I really love this record. It's a complicated record. It's a dark record, but it's one of my favorites of theirs. And I always forget how much I love it until I put it on again.
Yeah. Me too. It's so great. Also has a tremendous title. Grace Under Pressure is a great album title.
And maybe I love the graphic. I love the graphic.
Yeah, so do I.
And this cover is one of those that's absolutely wasted on the CD era. You have to see this on vinyl.
The vinyl, it pops.
And it doesn't look to me like an album from 1984. It looks like it's from 2004. It's so modern looking. And I do believe this is Hugh Syme again.
It is Hugh Syme again. Yeah, I just looked.
The Grace Under Pressure title is that title came from the Difficult sessions.
Yeah.
And the difficulties with the producer and getting this album made. And to this day, Rush have said that this album, Hemispheres and Vapor Trails, are like the hardest ones that they ever made.
Wow. That was the other thing I wanted to mention was Afterimage, and what a terrific song it is.
One of the first songs that Rush wrote, if not only songs that they wrote dealing with death. Robbie Wellen was the assistant engineer for Rush on a handful of their albums, and he would ski with Neil. Neil loved to ski. And when he passed away young. And that line about the shouts through the woods, the snowy woods or whatever it is, that's what that comes from. So it's a very emotionally resonant song.
Yeah, and the opening lyric is so beautiful. Suddenly you were gone from all the lives you left your mark upon.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh man, it just hits home, man. If anyone's ever dealt with grief, it just hits home. And there's another great guitar solo in that song too. Yet another Alex Lifeson
as I
gem.
mentioned.
Yes.
That's right. So we are at number 6, and I believe I already stated that Farewell to Kings was my number 6.
Yes.
Tell us about your number 6, Mikey.
Sure. So my number 6 is Presto. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Ian has the super amazing version of Presto, the SACD High Fidelity edition.
Audio
Presto,
fidelity.
Audio fidelity. Excuse me. It is high fidelity, audio fidelity, right?
Audio fidelity. Yep. High Fidelity is a film with John
Cusack.
Yes,
you're right.
If you could wave your magic wand, would you make everything all right?
I sure hope so. I'd make everybody free, that's for sure.
That's for sure.
So Presto is an album that I have very fond memories of getting. It was one of the maybe first 6 or 7 Rush albums that I got. I bought this one myself when I was early high school. And I was on vacation with my family, and it has like a nostalgic quality for me a little bit too, because of the vacation. But also, I always loved this record. I think a genuinely terrific album. This coming off the heels of Hold Your Fire, so I think the songwriting caliber carries over into this album. This is just a batch of amazingly written songs. I think maybe the only one that's kind of forgettable for me is Anagram, which is a song that also I think interestingly points, this time listening to it, it points to Roll the Bones quite a bit, I think. It's just kind of not as memorable as the rest of the stuff.
Yeah.
But man, the other songs are so great. And again, Neil is writing some of the best lyrics of their whole career on this album in particular. Like lyrically, like especially Red Tide and The Pass are probably two of the best lyrics in the whole thing. The Pass is a top 5 Rush song for me also. Mm-hmm. I find it so startlingly beautiful, and also like very personal for me as well, for a lot of reasons. Yeah, it's just great. And it's got the opening 1-2 punch of Show Don't Tell and Chain Lightning.
Oh yeah, Chain Lightning's the favorite.
Yeah, I love Chain Lightning.
The favorite of mine. And then The Pass and Warpaint, it's like the whole like first half of the album is just
Presto,
phenomenal.
Superconductor. I also think Available Light is my favorite Rush closing song.
It's a good one.
Another one I find really beautiful.
It's Pete Getty vocally too.
I was just going to say that, yeah. And Getty's singing on that is maybe the best in the whole thing. Amazing singing. I love the lyrics in this album have motifs also of light and showing, and the Available Light is about like sunrise and sunset.
Interesting.
And there's the lyric, the promise offered in the east is broken in the west. I just knocks me out every time I hear that. God, this album rules, guys.
It does. It's a great album.
Listen to this album. I think it's a much maligned album for some reason, or it's just kind of forgotten, and this is why I think it's the most underrated record in the catalog. I even like the rabbit cover. It's kind of weird, but it fits. Yeah, look at those rabbits.
and they were a feature of the stage show at the time too. Like Pink Floyd had their inflatable pig and the inflatable family and all that stuff. So they had inflatable rabbits. And of course they would always run out of air. So by the end of the show, your rabbits would be
so funny.
They had a motif where they shot one of the rabbits. Like there was a cartoon and there was like a good bunny and a bad bunny, and the bad bunny shot the good bunny, and that was like the end of the bunnies. They decided they had enough of the bunnies. They were hanging around for too long. And this is one of those instances where it was something that the band thought was hilarious, but the audience response was like, "Oh my God, you killed the bunny." Can't kill the bunny.
Yeah, oh my gosh. People are a little sensitive, I think. So you got to be careful with that kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I mean, that also, like, maybe one of their best tours as well.
It is.
The band is on fire.
It's one of my favorite tours. And there's a clip, Stick Hits has a great YouTube channel where he's restoring classic Rush clips, which is all of them, in my opinion. All of them are classic now. But he did a nice little upgrade on some Presto material, and it's fantastic. A song like Scars really comes to life in the live setting, and that's one of those songs I wish that they had played more of. Maybe a reason why this album is so underrated is that the band themselves undervalue it.
Yeah.
And they kind of say that it's a warm up to Roll the Bones, but I feel like Roll the Bones was like a B grade version of this.
Yeah.
Like I find this album a lot stronger, and maybe it's something to do with Rupert Hines' production. It's very different than Peter Collins, or for that matter, it's very different than Terry Brown. But this is Rush beginning to strip back a little bit for the first time in a long time. And they're kind of underproducing themselves. The keyboards are more textural. They're less, they're less up in front in terms of mix and the writing. But there is a little bit of like 1989 production itis here where the reverb is a little heavy handed. Maybe the bottom end isn't what it could be. But I do think that this is, for what it is, it's a very good album, and texturally it's very interesting. Like some of the sounds that Alex Lifeson is using on guitar, especially songs like Hand Over Fist, it has some really interesting guitar tones on it. But I think The Pass is the all-time classic from this album, very easily. It's kind of like an after-school special, but it's a very meaningful topic to me as well. I was just so impressed by Warpaint. Earlier I think I made the comment about the song that goes, "The boys and girls together paint the mirror black." Like I just think that is such an epic little song.
It is.
So many like little changes and subtle things going on in it. Presto, the title track, that's a song they broke out on the Time Machine tour.
I loved hearing that live. That was
worked
awesome.
So well. Yeah, I wish I could have seen that tour. That's probably my favorite.
Great.
They hit another peak there, I think. Superconductor's a great riff. Anagram for Mongo. It may be a great Blazing Saddles reference, but that isn't enough to make it a great song for me. Although the chorus is memorable, so it's like a kind of a mediocre song with a great chorus. The kind of second or third classic from this album is Red Tide, and I really wish that they would have played that live more often.
I know.
I also absolutely adore Available Light as much as you do, although I don't know if it's quite my favorite Rush closer. There's some pretty stiff competition, like between the likes of Vital Signs and La Via Strangiato, but it's pretty sweet.
For me, I don't know. It's emotional. For me, it's emotionally resonant. It's a personal choice, but man, it's so great. That's the one for me. What position is this album for you in your ranking?
It is. I think it's quite a bit lower. It's at 13 for me.
This is the one that's not in your top 10, and It is mine.
Yeah, but I gave this a listen last night, and I love it. Like it may be low on my list, but I do think it's a great Rush record. But then again, I think Clockwork Angels is a great Rush record, and it's right above this on my list. So I don't know. I totally respect your choice at having this so high.
Yeah, this used to be in my top 5, but it got knocked out by something else we'll get to very soon.
Oh, and that's a good segue, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, we are at number 5.
Yes, we are in the top 5, folks.
5 is the number of the counting, and the number of the counting shall be 5.
5.
4 is right out. But at number 5, I have Signals. But we're not going to talk about that one yet.
Yes,
what are we going to talk about?
Yet. My number 5 is Counterparts. He's got another amazing audio fidelity version of this.
So the story with the SACDs, I'll be brief, is that way back 100 years ago, Mike and I used to have this radio program called Prog Rock Deep Cuts. And I would regularly receive promos from pretty major labels. And I don't know if Audio Fidelity counts as a major label, but they sent me these 2 albums as promos. And I'm really grateful for that, because now I actually have a Blu-ray player that plays SACD, so I can enjoy these. I missed out on Roll the Bones, which is the other one that they put out, and they also put out Hemispheres. I totally missed out on those, and I regret that, because now these go for like $75 a piece.
They are expensive, and I think they're out of print too, aren't they?
They're out of print, but they are the best sounding versions of these albums that I've heard. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and possibly start a fire in the comments section by saying that I think this is the best produced Rush album of all time.
I mean, I think you might be right.
So why do we love Counterparts?
Man, I always really loved this album, but this listen in particular really put a fire on me on this album. This album
was it a cold fire?
It was a cold fire.
Well, we'd like to do for you a song right now that shows a new direction of our band. This is country and western music, as you know. Yes, we decided to change. It's a good old-fashioned country song called Cold Fire.
We'll get to that song also, because that's another one that I love to pieces. But this, man, the thing that struck me the most about this album this time is how inspired the band sounds. There is a lift behind every single song on this album. They're cooking. They're having fun. They just kick major ass. It feels like there's like an energy here that hasn't been felt in a long time, maybe since like Power Windows, honestly. They're just cooking and loving what they're doing. And it just comes off in all this material. It like elevates everything on here. Yeah. Even maybe the weakest song is like The Speed of Love, but it elevates it because the band is just so inspired playing this music. And it's, even that's just a decent song. It's good. It's just such an inspired album. And it's got Animate, which is one of the best opening songs in the whole catalog. Nothing, I think, exemplifies the tone of an album quite like Animate does. And it's got that iconic opening drum part too. It's so good.
A drum part you can sing.
Yeah, it is another drum part you can sing.
Yep.
They're just firing on all cylinders in every way on this album. And then you get Stick It Out after that, which is maybe the heaviest Rush song. And it rips to pieces. I think my favorite song on here is Cold Fire.
Mm-hmm.
Cold Fire is
Cold Fire.
a seriously killer deep cut, and it has a terrific guitar solo also. Totally amazing. Between Sun and Moon is also amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Leave That Thing Alone is one of the best instrumentals in the whole catalog. Again, another one that was really fun on the Time Machine tour.
Well, you got Stick It Out on Time Machine too, right?
Yeah.
How was that?
Ripping.
Yeah.
It was so great. It was ripping. And then I think the other massive song on here is Nobody's Hero, which is such a beautiful song, man.
That's a peak ballad for them.
It is a peak ballad for sure. Yeah, I just love it. There's swagger on every song too, especially Sun and Moon and Alien Shore. The band is just like strutting their stuff. They're grooving. There's another Neil's lyrics are really strong on this album too. There's a lot of relationship material on this too.
Yep, which is a theme that dates back, I mean, maybe to like Inner New, but then it was explored on Hold Your Fire.
Yep.
And then to a somewhat greater degree on Roll the Bones. So I almost feel like that whole relationship thread is something that just picked up right where Roll the Bones left off.
Yeah, I think so too. It's a very natural progression.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. It pays off in dividends on this album.
Yes.
It's number 5 for a reason. It's amazing. It's one of the strongest in the catalog.
I have this at number 7, which seems maybe a little bit low for me because I've always really loved it. But you talked about how this was like maybe their strongest album since Power Windows. And I think it's interesting to note that this is the return of Peter Collins as producer. And I'm kind of the opinion that they should have worked with him throughout the rest of their career because he seems to be a good fit for them. And not only do you have 4 really great sounding Rush records and really well produced and arranged Rush records, but you have 4 of the most diverse sounding Rush records. I feel like Peter Collins got them, and he got what they were going for each one of these albums, because if I didn't know any better, I would have no idea that the same guy who produced Power Windows and Hold Your Fire worked on this, because they don't sound like they're in the same universe. This, of course, is the album where the keyboards went bye-byes. They're there just a little bit. There's like a little bit of like fills or something in Animate. But one time I heard this story where, or maybe I read it, where Alex had said no keyboards on this album, and Geddy promised him no keyboards on this album. And so they roll up to the studio to start work on this, and here comes Geddy dragging his keyboards. And apparently there was like a like this image of like Alex nearly quitting because here comes this.
That's so funny.
Rack of keyboards into the studio.
Like giving him a goofy look, like
it's like no, Alex. No, Alex, it's just for texture. It's just a little bit here and there. But it was like a standoff. But speaking of the great songs on this album, it's just about all of them. You mentioned Animate being like maybe the best Rush opener in a long time. I mean, like for me, it's up there with like Force 10, Tom Sawyer, Spirit of Radio, too. Big Money. Yeah, sure. Or even Dreamline. Like it's in that. It's kind of in that upper echelon of great Rush openers. Stick It Out and Cut to the Chase are great heavy rock songs. I think Nobody's Hero is like really special. Like it's the first like really, really special song on the album, as just being a song about the heroes that aren't on the news. It's the everyday acts of goodwill in humans. And it's such a beautiful sentiment. And then, Between the Sun and the Moon, with that kind of Beatlesy chorus. It's so infectious. This song feels very 1960s to me. Like it feels like they're heading back for the Feedback album. Which we aren't ranking. A lot of that. We aren't ranking that album, but I hear a lot of that here.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of that kind of era in the grunge music that inspired them, and also in like some of the classic bands, they're reaching back to the 60s era. There's like a revival in the 90s of that kind of music. And, it pays off a lot in this album. I feel
that was maybe where a lot of Rush's confidence was coming from, is that you had people like Eddie Vedder saying that, oh, I'm a Rush fan. You had Les Claypool. You had Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins. Like these are all people who grew up listening to Rush. And now they're popular. They're becoming well known, and Rush feels relevant again. They feel relevant as a hard rock three-piece again, which maybe hadn't been the case for the past couple of years. But you hear this influence from Primus in a song like Alien Shore, which has some of Geddy's grooviest, best bass playing ever. And I think I had in my notes at one point that between this song and Leave That Thing Alone, I really feel like this is Geddy's bass record. He is just killing it. Every single track.
Oh, he sounds amazing. Yeah.
It's just incredible. Oh, we should talk about our discovery in Double Agent.
Yes, we have to.
Yes, we have to, because I don't think anybody else has talked about this. So we mentioned that there's the 1812 Overture quote in 2112.
2112, yeah.
And in this song, Double Agent, there's a Mission Impossible quote, or at least I'm pretty sure that's what's going on.
I think so also.
If you listen underneath the solo section where Alex gets to blow, Geddy is very clearly playing the bum 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 bum. And then I think he plays it in a different key or something after that. But it's really sick, and it's one of those just like really funny.
Yeah, it's a wonderful like little comedic moment.
Yeah,
like, it's a song about a double agent, like a secret agent, and it's like, oh, here's Mission Impossible real quick. It's like something Zappa would do, you know?
Yeah, exactly, and I think he did do.
Yeah, it's the eyebrows in the music that's so great.
The best band you never heard in your life, I think he quotes. They do the Mission Impossible theme.
Yes, that band quoted like everything under the sun. Also,
and they did everything. Yeah.
Yeah, Zappa would point and they would do anything. But go on.
But Leave That Thing Alone is maybe my favorite Rush instrumental of all time.
It's amazing.
We are going to rank the Rush instrumentals, by the way, when we're done.
Yes, we are.
So stay tuned to see where Leave That Thing Alone ranks for me. But I do think that even though it's maybe not the classic of the album, that Cold Fire is the best song on the album. It's the one that's the most memorable to me. And in Martin Popoff's book, Contents Under Pressure, Neil Peart says that Cold Fire was the one he was most proud of.
Hey.
And that it was influenced by a Paul Simon song, and I can't remember which one it was, but it was basically a discussion between a man and a woman, and it was like kind of the immature man and the smart woman. Yep. And it was like he said this, and what about this, and then she said this, and then she said this, and she added this, and he just loved the idea of like including an intimate conversation as the basis of a song. And for me, it's the most successful song and the most memorable song on the album. So Counterparts, this is an incredible album. I think it's undervalued.
I agree.
This is my Presto. Like you talked about how like you find Presto to be very undervalued. I think this is the one that is most underrated.
Yeah, it's amazing. I also really like Everyday Glory. I know you're not as huge on it as I am.
I'm not. Yeah.
The second half of that song I think is very impactful. I love it as a closer.
It might grow on me one of these days. We'll see. I felt that The Speed of Love could be the closer because it just kind of feels like it sums up the whole relationship theme.
That's an interesting point. Yeah.
A lot better.
It's still amazing though.
It's an amazing record. Yeah, it's another long Rush record, but I never feel the length of this one.
I think it's justified with this one.
Yep.
You know, like it earns its length, which is a somewhat rare thing, especially for the era in which that came out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And like considering like a lot of the bands that were still around from the 70s and 60s, like producing albums at this era, Counterparts is like head and shoulders above so many of the other ones.
Yeah, like this might spark some controversy, but you and I were not kind to Thrack.
I know. I used to love Thrack, but not so much anymore. And I think this is a lot better record than Thrack is.
And I would compare this in Thrack because they're examples of an older band that are maybe embracing grunge, but they're also sort of going back to their roots at the same time.
Yeah, and it's way better than like the Division Bell and stuff like that too.
Oh yeah. But I prefer this one to Thrack. So I don't know how some of you will feel about that, but
yes,
I think this is a great album of the era. So we are moving on to your number 4.
Yeah. My number 4 album is one that used to be a number 1, but now it kind of floats. The top 4 for me have been ones that float around as number 1, but now I've kind of landed on a spot. And number 4 for me is Signals. With the dog and the
Puppy
signal
dog.
for the dog to go to the bathroom, the fire hydrant.
This is one of my favorite Hugh Syme works, by the way.
Mine too.
It's just iconic.
It like kind of creeps up on you. It's like, oh, why would they make a dog and a fire hydrant a cover? But then it's like, it's great. Whatever. It's awesome. It also, like, there's a lot of inside jokes on the pretend mall map and the back sleeve also, which comes out a lot more on the record. I have a really great vinyl copy that was my uncle's.
Do I.
It's really tremendous and very funny.
But this is a highly valued Atomic CD pressing. This is one of the best sounding discs. I also have the MoFi, the Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs version of this, which is interesting because it's missing the chorus of the weapon.
What?
Yeah, just one chorus comes through and you just hear the instrumental underneath, and I kind of like it. I don't mind
That's
it. That's
so weird. It might work better that way. I don't know. That's weird though. It's just all of a sudden missing a chorus.
And I think it's right before like one of the solo breakdowns too, so it kind of works in a way. The other big difference with this and the MoFi version is I think the MoFi lacks a little bit of punch, and I still kind of prefer the Atomic in a way. Signals is my number 5, and I have Grace Under Pressure at 4. So apparently I like Grace Under Pressure a little bit better.
Signals. Look at that.
Just a little bit better. This used to be my favorite.
Yeah, me too.
When I saw Rush in 2012, they opened with Subdivisions, and that was like another mind blown. That was the first time my mind was blown that night. It was when they started with that right off the bat, and it was my favorite record of theirs at the time.
Oh wow!
So yeah, why do we love Signals?
One of the biggest strengths is its sequencing, right? Like Subdivisions is such a great opener. Like the way that the tracks are arranged is so strong. It may be like the best sequenced Rush album. Like it just flows so naturally.
You might be right about that.
It's a really wonderful exercise in contrast and relief. Much like a good set list is. This album is extremely well thought out and constructed. Also, this is really the reggae album because there's like almost every song has like a reggae feel to it. And it works on this album. It really works.
Unless you're Terry Brown.
Yeah, unless you're Terry Brown, it doesn't work for him. But for everybody else, it works and pays off in dividends. I think this is also really the album where Neil Peart's drum parts start to become like masterful orchestration.
Yeah. Like Digital Man.
Holy crap. Yeah, Digital Man and New World Man are great examples. Like it's just, he's so musical. Like is using the drums and percussion as, an instrument. It's creating like, or it's almost like my uncle and I were talking about this.
Instrument.
Yeah, it's melodic. It's like an orchestra, like composing for an orchestra, but your orchestra is the drum surfaces. It's amazing, and this might be the best Neil album, quite frankly. Every time I hear it, I'm like, oh my God. This album has also a few of my all-time favorites. We have Analog Kid, which is an incredible song that always gets me up on my feet. We have Digital Man.
I think they were written at the same time, right?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
The Analog Kid and the Digital Man.
Yeah, it works. It makes sense. And then you have New World Man, of course, is an iconic classic that was written in a day.
Yep, the last minute song.
Yep. And then one of my favorite ballads, Losing It.
Yes.
That lyric is unbelievable.
It kind of sits with Genesis and the song Duchess.
Yeah, it does. And it has a great violin solo, too. By
Ben Mink, who is Geddy Lee's best friend, I think, outside of Alex.
Yeah, I think
and
so,
he made My Favorite Headache with him. Geddy Lee's solo album he made with Ben Mink.
Yeah, really that's right. That's so cool. I also got to say, like, Neil's drums, again, especially during that violin solo, are nuts. That is a terrific accompaniment to the violin solo. Just a total treat for me to hear. Mm-hmm. Just like this album. Even like maybe the weakest song, maybe Chemistry, but every time I hear that song, I'm like, oh, okay, it's not weak, it's great, actually. I love it. So that's constantly rewarding. This album consistently rewards. Every time you hear it, it's great. I think this is the first one that on the list it's like a masterpiece. This is just bar none an amazing album.
Yep.
It's hard to top this. Somehow, according to us, they did, but somehow it's hard to beat this.
You forgot to mention Countdown, which is a song.
Great.
When I sat down and listened to this, that's the song that surprised me the most because I always liked it, but I really liked it.
I love it
this last time I played it. And I think maybe the band have some misgivings about it for whatever reason, but they were invited to see a shuttle launch. and this was them writing about that experience. And I love that excitement about exploration and the imagery of the shuttle taking off into space.
Cut it with a knife.
You also have part 2 of the Fear trilogy, The Weapon.
Yep. That's great.
The commentary that we cling to weapons out of fear.
Yep.
Is a really nice really nice sentiment. But the knowledge that we fear is the weapon that would be held against us. That too. That's also an interesting weapon. Fear can be weaponized. It can be the opposite.
Yes.
So some of Neil's best lyrics here. They did get a chance to play "Losing It" because they didn't play it originally on the tour, but on the R40 tour they played it with Ben Mink.
Yeah,
and that
I
really
love that.
is something special. That's something special to see.
That's, I think, the highlight of the whole R40 for me is "Losing It."
Mm-hmm.
Like when I, heard that they played that, I was like, jaw agape. Like, they did what? I love that thing.
We don't have as much to say about this album, but I guess what is there to say? It's a great Rush album.
What is there to say? It's a record that's been, lauded time and again by many folks. It's hard to add something eloquent, but it is truly deserves its reputation. This is one of the best Rush albums in both of our opinions.
It is, yes. We are at
number 3.
My number 3 is Power Windows.
Oh, nice.
Which might be my number 1, but we'll get to that. But your number 3 is not Power Windows. But
no, my number 3 is
similarly titled.
Has the same initials. Number 3 for me is Permanent Waves. I like that cover better than the redo, which I'm holding in my hand. It's kind of a funny redo cover, but I like this cover better. I think it fits the tone of the record better.
Well, look at her hair. She's got permanent waves.
Come on. See? Come on, that's hilarious, guys.
Yeah. Now, does yours have the Dewey Defeats Truman magazine, like the
no, it
newspaper
says blah blah blah, and then and then on the insert is the original cover, which is hilarious. Yeah, this is I have the 2020. It's the 40th anniversary edition, so it's like a remix, and then it has a live concert from the Permanent Waves tour.
Not to be a jerk, but I don't think it's a remix because the tapes are lost for this.
Right, it might be a master.
I think it's a new master, but I think I read that particular version of it is really good in terms of mastering.
It does sound great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's well worth it. And there's also some unseen images in there which are great, and there's a memorial to Neil at the end too, because he passed away in 2020. Much to everyone's loss. The world is a way less good place without him. Between
him and David Lynch passing in the last couple of years, I'm just like, my heroes are gone, man.
Yeah, we've had a lot of artistic loss lately, and it's not great.
By the way, speaking of David Lynch, which I will figure any way to work David Lynch into a conversation, but there is a David Lynch reference in this album cover that some of you may know, and if you look, they thank Henry Spencer and the Baby, which is a reference to the film Eraserhead.
Oh my God, I never caught that.
This is one of 2 David Lynch references that occur in Rush records and specifically Rush liner notes. The other is Roll the Bones, where at the bottom it says, "Now it's dark." That's a reference to the film Blue Velvet, because the character of Frank Booth, played by Dennis Hopper, says that several times throughout the film. Now it's dark.
So, man, I got to watch that soon.
Now you know.
It off. What a shame on my part.
Neil Peart called it a comedy classic, so you'll have to find out if you agree with him on that, because some may say he's got a rather liberal definition of comedy.
Yeah, it's supposed to be kind of dark, so
it's pretty dark, yeah. But it's also about the light too. That's a very important theme in Blue Velvet. But I do have the Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab version of Permanent Waves, and I've always liked the cover of it, even though I don't care for the mastering. It's like got weird EQ or something. But I like the inclusion of that photo. I don't remember seeing that before.
Yeah,
I don't think
in this one.
Is that in that version?
But it's separated. They're like up and down rather than directly across.
But that's enough show and tell. So why do we love Permanent Waves so much?
For me, this is Rush in full flight. They have arrived. This is the album where all of it comes together and is They are here, and Spirit of Radio starts with, "Oh my God, this is a mission statement of the band."
Yep.
They're fully formed. I think a big reason why for me too is the sound. I love the sound of this album. It's just like, when I think of Rush, like just the sound of this record is one of the first things that pops into my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know, it's just the way the tones that Alex uses, the way that the bass and the drums and the guitar interlock with each other on this album. It's just the best, man. It's really amazing. I also mentioned in my notes that this is where Neil really starts to experiment as being a great orchestrator on the drums. Like the parts work so well for all the material here. This also has Free Will on it, which is a favorite of mine. I always love that song, and I never will stop loving that song. That's like Free Will is like the Tom Sawyer for me. It's like that's just an amazing song, and it's so nice to hear a song like that on the radio too.
Oh yeah. Especially that solo section.
Yeah, the solo section is amazing. It's almost like fusion.
Geddy Lee's bass playing during the solo section is more impressive to me than the solo.
It steals the show for me every time. Geddy rips, man. He's awesome.
Oh yes.
It also has my number 1 and number 2 favorite mini Rush epics. And that's Jacob's Ladder and Natural Science. Jacob's Ladder is now my favorite. Man, the stuff that Alex does in Jacob's Ladder, especially at the end, is just genius. All of these really amazing, intricate guitar lines. It's beautiful. It really evokes the like lights shining through the cloud motif that they were going for. It's perfect. The Natural Science just kicks ass.
Do you hear that, by the way?
No.
Okay, good.
Hey, do you hear that? What? Oh, nothing. Whoops. Did you hear that?
Well, there's Beabout, that's me, and then there's Meowsabout, and Meowsabout is at the door.
Oh.
He wants to say hi. Say hi.
Hiya, Servo. How's Buddy doing?
Oh. He's bugging, that's what he's doing.
He's bugging.
He's bugging. But basically, I'm just going to hold him until he gets sick of it.
That's fair.
What you were saying.
Natural Science also absolutely rips. That whole middle section is one of the coolest and most energetic sections in the whole Rush catalog. It's just great, man. It's just beautiful music. Entre Nous is a fun song too. Although I think it's probably the weakest cut on the album, maybe. But it's still a really good song.
I think some will very, very much disagree with that point, but I think I agree with you.
Yeah, it's a great song, but I don't think it's as great as everything else. And you alluded to this before too, but Different Strings really is a little masterpiece, and is one of those songs that I wish would continue on, because it like starts really cooking, and Alex starts playing this awesome guitar solo, and it fades out. It's like, no, wait, where are you going? Come back.
It's enigmatic. It's very mysterious.
Yes.
And Neil talks about in the Pop-Off book, Contents Under Pressure, he says to him, mystery was just a trail in the woods that he doesn't know where it's going to go, or it's a road that he's never been down. He's just obsessed with mysteries. He's in love with mysteries. And I think that Different Strings is one of those songs that really captures that sentiment.
Yeah, totally.
For me, this opens with two absolutely just quintessential Rush songs, The Spirit of Radio and Free Will. You just cannot poke any holes in either one of these tunes. The fact that these are so great and the fact that they are so readily heard on the radio is just nothing short of incredible to me. People just who don't know Rush will air drum to this song when they hear it. If they love music and hear this on the radio, they'll air drum along with it. But I love the idea that at that time, I guess there was a Toronto radio station that was freeform. They would just play punk, they'd play hard rock, progressive rock, just whatever they liked. And Neil loved this idea of radio that was curated, but also that you never knew what you were going to get. And that's how you end up with these sections that are more punk rock. That you've got a reggae section, you got a hard rock section. Like this was just Rush surveying what was around at that time. And so like there's a historical context to a song like Spirit of Radio, while also being essentially about the same things that 2112 was about, the freedom of music. And I love that for it. And then Free Will, a song about choice. And, Geddy does have a passage in his book where he yells at anti-maskers, which is really funny. He's like, this is not what free will is about.
That's so great.
My free will is my free will not to get sick.
Yeah, it's a different thing.
It's a different thing.
For
It's not what we
Christ's sake.
intended.
Yeah.
But I still love it, even though it's misinterpreted. Jacob's Ladder is the one that surprised me the most. Like,
It's incredible,
I
man.
love this song. And, Neil Peart said he's a weather freak. And I think that connects the song to like Force 10 too. But this is one of my favorite Rush epics. And I think this is one of those songs, one of the few songs that would be interchangeable between this one and Hemispheres. Like I could see this fitting perfectly next to The Trees. And I think they play them rather close together on Exit Stage Left, but I could be wrong about that. It's been a while. Inner New, I think, is the beginning of Rush writing about relationships and kind of getting away from more sci-fi or abstract concepts down to the more intimate. And I like that. It's an important step. And I played this song to death as a young person because it really meant something to me. And I wonder if that's why, upon revisiting it, it's the one that I'm least enamored by. I wonder if I'm just tired of it. But Different Strings, like we said before, really impressed me. But Natural Science, oh my goodness, that is the concert staple. I just love hearing that song live. Particularly Rush in Rio, that version of it is really strong.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And I never knew this, but Geddy actually said that they extended the Wheels Within Wheels section on Rush in Rio, and they shortened the ending a little bit.
Yes.
And I wonder if that's why I like that version maybe a little bit more than the studio cut, but I still absolutely adore the studio version. This is very close to being my favorite Rush record. And on some days it is.
Yeah, it's floated number one for me is also. It's hard. This one and the next one now like almost kind of fought each other. This almost won out.
Yeah.
They're like really neck and neck.
Our top three are like just the same, but in different orders. But
yes.
Really, the top three, any one could be number one for me. And
yeah.
it's going to be really hard for me to argue with the one that's my number one. Because I do have so much affection for this album. It's almost like they took prog rock and made it accessible. And that's incredible. That's a skill, man.
Yeah, I don't think anybody else has done that, really. It's a uniquely Rush thing. And it's beautiful. It's incredible.
Forget about the new wave. This is the permanent wave.
Yes. It's permanently etched into our musical canon.
All right. So we are now at number 2.
Yeah, the unpredictable choice for me. Number 2, I have Moving Pictures.
All right. And we didn't sync up.
No.
I thought we were going to. We almost did, but Moving Pictures is my number 1. But it doesn't really matter. They're so close.
They're so close.
But why did you pick this one over Permanent Waves? That's what I'm curious about.
Yes. So, this one I think has a little more nostalgia quality for me because this is one of the first ones that I heard. I think my first 2 Rush albums were 2112 and Moving Pictures. And this one I think I just have slightly more nostalgic towards. I think side 2 of this album is, for me, a little stronger than Permanent Waves. I know it just really slaps. The first side is like a string of iconic Rush songs. You have Tom Sawyer, Red Barchetta, YYZ, and Limelight. Just some of the like strongest and most confident material the band has ever made. Especially for me, Red Barchetta. That was like my first favorite Rush song. I just love that piece. It's, a perfect journey of a song, the open road. You're a young, just learning how to drive, and your uncle gives you the gift of an old car.
And cars are outlawed. So it's like,
yes,
it's that science fiction thing coming back. It's sort of like in 2112 where music is outlawed. Now cars are outlawed.
Cars are outlawed. Yeah. It's super cool. I don't think YYZ is my favorite Rush instrumental, but it is iconic beyond belief. And it put them on the map as musicians for musicians' sake.
Oh yeah. Especially those solos.
Yeah, all the solos are just iconic, endlessly singable too. So much fun.
Like Geddy's bass harmonics, that's incredible stuff.
Yeah, all the drum pattern that Neil does is genius through the whole thing. It's amazing. I think
immaculately captured too. It's so well recorded.
Yeah, for me, this is the Geddy Lee bass album, because Geddy's bass just sounds unbelievable on here. He plays some stuff.
He almost reminds me of Patrick O'Hearn.
Yeah,
on YYZ.
Yeah, absolutely. This record is so high for me because of side 2. Side 2, I think, is like nigh untouchable music. You have my second favorite Rush song of all time, The Camera Eye. That's my favorite epic also. I don't know what it is about it, but to me, it's like some wild magic put on tape. I just absolutely adore this piece of music. It's got Geddy's best bass playing. It's got amazing lyrics. The tune is very unpredictable and fun. Forget it. It's the best. The build up from the last 7 minutes to the end is just spectacular.
Mm-hmm. It's a mood piece.
It's a mood piece. It's peak. You feel the sense of possibilities in this one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting that Neil didn't think much of it, but I've always really liked it.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
I love it. I love it to death. And then you get The Witch Hunt, which is a super interesting song. The last part of Fear.
Mm-hmm. Censorship.
Yeah, and it has an iconic riff also.
Well, you could almost say it's censorship, but it's like fear of intellectualism.
Yeah.
It's about book burning, right?
Yeah, more or less. It's like hunting down the ideas that are different from the ones that wish to control the people, right?
Right. Yep. Very interesting.
Yeah, super interesting and important song. Then you get Vital Signs, which is a really kick-ass song that also, I think, points to Signals because it's got that reggae feel to it.
Yeah. Which that is the last minute song, by the way, which makes it even more incredible. But this is Rush. I think this may have been the first time they experimented with sequencers, and there's electronic percussion, a little bit of there's an electronic program snare drum in there.
Yeah.
Is that moment when Neil plays the fill and the set comes in, it's like a Duchess moment, even though this came out before that album. But that's almost what it reminds me of. But this is my favorite Rush album of all time. And it was very hard to pick that because when I listened to these in Permanent Waves side by side, I actually like Permanent Waves a little bit better. But the reason why I picked this as my number one is that I think this is the Rush album that even people who aren't Rush fans, if they're music fans or classic rock fans, they're probably going to own this and they're probably going to enjoy it. And it's like the ultimate crossover album. And it's a good crossover album. There's still elements of prog. Tom Sawyer is one of the proggiest things they've ever done. And it's amazing that that's their signature track. It's so full of iconic Rush moments that I never get sick of it.
That drum break is, a masterclass.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And just the sound, that synthesizer sound, that was that's how he tested, Geddy would test the sound system whenever they would set up at sound check, and he would hit that and they just decided to use it to open the album. And to me, when I think Rush, it's that sound. That's the sound I think of when I think of Rush. But then I also think of Spirit of Radio almost as much, or a song like Limelight from this album. Red Barchetta is one of those great storytelling songs, and it's about the freedom of the road. I think it's a little bit better on Exit Stage Left, on the video especially. YYZ is probably their most iconic instrumental. It's not my favorite either, but it's probably the one that most people would identify with them. I think Limelight is one of the most special songs in their catalog. Everybody quotes the line, "I can't pretend a stranger is a well-awaited friend." But it's like the introvert anthem.
It's
and
amazing.
I love it for that. I love it that it's so popular because I'm an introvert and I understand it. I'm not super famous, but I don't think they were yet. But this is the album that catapulted them to that level of suddenly where they were concerned about, people are getting a little bit too close to us. We're getting a little bit too well known. I could wax poetic about The Camera Eye and how much I love it, about how much I love Witch Hunt. But Vital Signs is my favorite song on the album because it is so funky and interesting. And I think I said to you earlier this week that I wish it had been like a Can funk groove, like 18 minutes long of Vital Signs. I could have taken that. But I just love the whole message of everybody get to elevate from the norm. That's just, again, that's going back to 2112 and sticking to their guns and carving out a path for themselves. It was totally unique. But this is the one, folks, for me, that if you don't know Rush, this is the one to own.
Yeah, this is like probably the best first Rush album also to listen to or to own. Like, it's a great entry point. That's the word.
Yeah. Neil Peart agreed. He said that he wished the band started here. So.
Yeah, it's a great place to start. And it's, like, it's so high because, like, as far as album construction goes, it's hard to top this. Like, this is such a well-crafted album. Again, with the like signals, like the sequencing of the album is darn near perfect, and it's, it sounds so great, and the music is so high caliber. There's energy behind everything here. It's just one of those records that's like one of the best ever made by anybody. We have maybe a somewhat surprise pick for me. Well, for listening, not for me if you know me as a person, but
it might not be a surprise maybe for people who have viewed the channel, because I actually just did a video on this album.
Yes, you did.
So I don't know how much more I can say about it that I haven't already. But I guess that's a perfectly good reason to turn it over to you. So tell us, what is, in your opinion, the best Rush album, or I should say, what is your favorite Rush album?
Yes, that's the right word. My favorite Rush album is Power Windows from 1985. I just look at that cover too. I love the cover of this album.
Oh yeah. The whole idea of reality distortion.
Yeah.
And the way that television and media changes the way that we view the world. I love that.
Yeah, it's ever prescient.
Yes.
It's even more important, I think, now.
Yes.
It's a quintessential motif of like writing and art in the 80s is now even more so with everything like AI and social media and all that horrible and somewhat good jazz that we live in today.
Well, and I don't mean to derail this, but I find myself pulling away from it now.
Yeah, so do I.
I'm getting back to reality. I'm disconnecting from media more and more.
Yeah, so am I. Except for the little circles that I find joy in, like the music circles and the reading circles and all sorts of jazz.
Yeah, but I'm trying to read more. Less time on my phone and read more, think more deeply.
Yep, same. I think it's a good thing.
But I think Neil would enjoy that. I think he would like to hear that.
I think so too.
Because that's his thing. He was always the reader. But the one thing I think that I didn't say about this in my video that I kind of said earlier, and that's that this was Rush taking all those genres that they experimented with and they were synthesizing them together. And it was becoming Rush music. Rush was now a genre of music to pull from. And I think that's why this is a really important album. And speaking for myself, this has been my favorite record lately. And Marathon is my all-time favorite Rush tune, with Vital Signs in second place. So I like the weird ones, folks.
Yeah, I do too. I think you're right. This is where the synthesis happens, and I think is maybe why it's, for me, the best one. This is a really high watermark for this band in a lot of ways. I think this is the best lyrics in the catalog. Neil's lyrics are just off the charts on every single song. Yeah. It's like deep,
the theme of power.
Resonant. The theme of power. It's very emotionally impactful. It's says a lot about the world that we live in still today.
Yes,
it's
the power of money.
Yeah, the power of money.
Power of commercialism.
And also, the power of everything, really.
The power of love with a motion detector.
Yeah.
The power of nationalism with territories. Like, there's so many interesting.
Yeah, the power of, wishing to be, power of escapism in Middletown Dreams, too.
Yeah, the power of dreams.
Yes. I don't think we've talked about this much, too, but, Rush is just three dudes. Like, how do three dudes make so much great sound?
Well, there are actually four dudes on this album because Andy Richards contributes a lot of keyboard work to this.
Okay,
so
there you go.
There's like a ghost fourth member on this record. But they still had to go out and play the stuff live. And look at an album like, look at the A Show of Hands video, and they're pulling it off. They're a three-man rock pop orchestra.
Yeah, it's incredible stuff. Like, continually impressive. This is like, for me, this is also one of those albums that really gets me up out of my feet and I just like run around dancing, because like it's like a hype up extreme for me. Like the Big Money, Grand Designs, Manhattan Project, Marathon, like that whole run of tunes is like, oh my God, I'm in cloud nine for 25, 30 minutes. Just amazing stuff. Marathon is up there for me as well as one of my all-time favorites, and so is Grand Designs. My favorite Rush song of all time, though, is Middletown Dreams.
Oh,
And that's
yeah.
without
That's your
question.
favorite of all time.
That's my favorite. Yeah, I know it's somewhat
Interesting.
weird pick.
Now, I know a lot of people who say that they don't really like this album, but they love that song. So I don't think
Yeah.
it's as weird as you might think.
I hope not, because it's so deserving of it. I think it hits me hard right in the feels. You know, it's so relatable.
Get out of town,
You know,
man.
Yeah, everyone wants to be somewhere else. You like live this mundane life or whatever, then you like dream you're out playing guitar in a band, or you dream you're, touring the world doing some other nonsense.
It's subdivisions and it's Caravan. Like it's Caravan again too.
Yeah, but it's distilled into one song, and it also surprises you with its structure also, because it doesn't have a traditional song format either. It's just amazing. It's so deep, and it has another one of those really amazing guitar solos in it. I think the best guitar solo on the album might be an Emotion Detector. Just a big sleeper hit for me also. That's probably the song that took the longest to click on this album for me, but my God, is it awesome.
That hook right to the heart of the matter. That just runs through my head all the time.
With the cymbals going la 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 la, right to the heart of the matter. That's magic.
Yeah, that when I saw them in 2012, they played about half of this album. You would have been flipping out.
Yeah, I lost my mind.
In the second set, they had the Clockwork Angels string section, so they did Manhattan Project with the strings, which was sweet because there's strings on this album, and that's something I think I mentioned that in my review, is that there's a lot of sounds on this album that you might mistake for keyboard tones, but they're real. Like there's a real choir on Marathon, and there's real strings on Manhattan Project, and also on Marathon. The one song that I didn't talk about a whole lot on my video was Grand Designs, and how much I remember listening to this one time. Exact circumstances elude me, but the lyric "Life in Two Dimensions is a mass production scheme." I remember writing that down in my notes on my phone and just thinking about it for like a whole day. Like, what does that mean to me? Like, I understand the words, but what does it mean to me? And it's like, it's about commercialization. It's about these corporations that buy up things that we love and they just turn them into garbage. It's Disney.
Yeah.
It's
100%.
It's Amazon Prime buying up the Lord of the Rings, like and James Bond, very recently. It's that whole idea of once things become corporate, they lose what makes them special, and you have to pop up out of the surface. It's the 2112 thing all over again. I love that these themes circulate throughout the catalog, and I feel like Rush is one of those catalogs that do have some of the best and most well-rounded themes throughout their entire career.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's just a really special record. I don't know. It's one of my favorites of all time. I love it to bits. Can't get enough. I listened to it twice in a row, I think, when we did the re-listen. And that says something, too. Like, it also has The Secret Territories, which is a really powerful song.
Yes.
Resonant in all ways, really. But yeah, this is my number one. There was no contest. I was like, should I put this above Moving Pictures? And when I put it on, I was like, yeah, there's no question for me. This is my ranking, and my number one is Power Windows.
It's my favorite lately. So I felt like by me going with Moving Pictures, that was my way of being that thing that people probably would expect. But I like that you went for this one because it's maybe my favorite at the moment too. This is an incredible record, and I feel like people who are fans of the band, who really love the band, know that.
Yeah.
But I think it needs to be discovered still by a wider audience.
Yes, absolutely. It's another one that has a lot of appeal also. It's got that 80s sound, but it's not cheesy. It's done really well. Like you said, there's analog instruments on it, and they interweave it well with the synthesizers and the guitars. It's great. Mm-hmm. Love it. Love the sound.
And there's a lot of stuff that's played by Alex that you wouldn't necessarily think is guitar, but it's very important parts of the track. Like I feel like he's better represented on this album than maybe people give him credit for. I know at the time he said that he felt like he was just a session player, like he'd been demoted or something because Peter Collins was bringing in all these elaborate arrangements. That was his big thing. But I actually disagree with Lurks. I think that by forcing him out of his box, he came up with some of his most creative material.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Ever, really. I think it's some of his most creative playing.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Some of his best stuff is here. No question.
All right. Well, is there anything else we want to say about this before we say goodbye to the folks? This is it. We've reached the end.
Yeah. Are we going to do the
line.
instrumental ranking, or is that a different thing?
Yes, let's do that. Do we want to talk about each one of these, or do we just want to rattle them off?
I think we should just rattle them off.
Yeah. I think
we've talked about them in each album.
Right, yeah. My number 7 is Malignant Narcissism, and I know you really like that tune.
Oh, wow.
And maybe it'll grow on me, but it just kind of struck me as being kind of like Limbo from the Test for Echo album, where it was just like a collection of ideas that they just kind of all strung together. And I wasn't sure if they fit so well. The Limbo is my number 6, and maybe I like it less, but I put Limbo at number 6 simply because I like that little King Crimson quote. What can I say?
Yeah, that's fine.
I like a shameless King Crimson reference. But at number 5, I have The Main Monkey Business, which I think is a very good song, very good instrumental. And it's one of the 3 from Snakes and Arrows, even though I'm not ranking Hope. It's more of just a solo piece. But I actually really enjoy the composition of Main Monkey Business, and it doesn't feel throwaway to me. Number 4 is Where's My Thing? This is a funky tune from Roll the Bones that lost out to the Best Instrumental Grammy to Eric Johnson and Cliffs of Dover, which is okay. I get it.
Yeah, deservedly so, I suppose. Right?
Yeah, but Eric Johnson was opening for Rush at the time, so if you saw Rush on the Roll the Bones tour, you would see 2 Grammy-nominated instrumentals played that night, which is pretty freaking sweet.
That's bonkers, yeah.
YYZ is my number 3, although maybe for some people it should be higher. We already talked about this at length. I just think it's the most iconic Rush instrumental. And then at number 2, I have La Via Strangiato, although I'm not sure I agree with that at this time of speaking. I might actually rank that as my number 1 occasionally. But, I just love the idea of it being about Alex's dreams, and it's just an incredible workout for those guys. And it's by far my favorite song from Hemispheres. And then at number 1, I have Leave That Thing Alone. It might be controversial, but watch the version on Time Machine. That is just some jaw-dropping stuff. And this is one of Geddy's best songs in terms of bass. But what I love about this song is that it's so far-reaching, and it has so many different contrasting sections of kind of rock and more kind of trippy sections, but it does so in just a short amount of time. It's easy to cover that much ground when you have 11 minutes to do it, or 9 or 10 minutes to do it, but to do it in a 4 or 5 minute space, it's much harder. And I think this is their finest instrumental. It's maybe the one that brings me the most joy year after year. So Mike, tell me yours.
Great. That's a good list. My Rush instrumental ranking goes as follows. So at number 7, I have Limbo. It's a nice song to hear, but it's pretty forgettable.
Yeah.
I can't really sing you a note of Limbo at any given point. It's a nice tune, but it's, doesn't have the staying power as the other ones. Number 6, I have The Main Monkey Business, which is a really nice tune, but I just like the other ones on this list a little more than that one. It's good stuff. At number 5, I have Where's My Thing, which is part 4 of the Gangster of Boats trilogy, whatever that is. It's a great and funky number. Huge fan of that one. I think it's great. And, that one being at number 5 shows how strong and Rush is at writing instrumentals. There really is nothing quite like a Rush instrumental to get your fire under your belly. You know what I'm saying?
It's true.
Number 4, I have YYZ, which is the most iconic instrumental maybe in rock and roll history. It's just great. But the other ones on this list I like more than that one. Number 3, I have Malignant Narcissism, which is probably our biggest deviation. I think the spontaneity lends strength to this tune. For me, it's a lot of fun to hear. They're just kind of improvising, and I love improvised music, so it's right up my alley, as they say. Number 2, I have Leave That Thing Alone, which is a really amazing tune. It's a completely awesome piece of music. It's well constructed, well played, and again, as we've mentioned before, the Time Machine version is really something special. like a highlight of the Rush career, in my opinion. And then at number 1, I have La Villa Strangiato, which is the band firing on all cylinders. It's a great concept about Alex's dreams, and it's just an awesome piece of music. Really a notch in the crown of Rush, really.
High watermark.
High watermark, that's it.
That might actually be my favorite closing track of any Rush record, is maybe La Via Strangiato.
It's a really good pick.
Even though maybe Vital Signs is my favorite Rush song, I am just going to be deliberately obtuse and pick that as my favorite closing track.
There we go.
Well, Mike, this has been fun.
It's been a blast.
Between this one and the Crimson video, like I didn't have nearly as much fun with Crimson. I'm not sure why that is, but maybe it's because Rush has that spirit of happiness. Like pretty much all of the Rush records have that. They just have a vibe to them that's totally unique, and I think it's something to do with the friendship that those three guys had. And this is truly a unique one-off band in the history of rock and roll. How many bands stayed together, the same lineup for 40 years and covered so much ground?
Yeah.
That's the impressive thing, and made records that were really hard to rank because a lot of them are just of similar quality across the board. And I think for both of us, a lot of it just came down to just personal taste, experience, our history with the records. Like that ended up really predicting the top 10 or so, or the top 5.
Rush is a consistently unique band that always pushed themselves and always made great music. There's not really a bad album in the bunch. They're so hard to rank because they're almost all of them are of a quality of excellence.
Yeah. And there'll never be another one.
There'll never be another one.
Them.
Yeah, there's never anyone like Rush. It's like a band that's remained friends for so long, making the same music together. It's really a joy to re-experience. I still want to hear more Rush, and I've listened to nothing but Rush for 2 weeks. That says something.
Yeah. I listened to Rush and Tangerine Dream exclusively for like 2 weeks, and that was just it was such a contrast, but it also kind of worked. It was like, the Tangerine Dream was kind of like a relief from all this Rush craziness, and vice versa. Like when I got sick of kind of listening to Tangerine Dream all the time, I switched to Rush, and it was like, oh, this is a totally different feel. But I want to, of course, encourage you folks at home who are watching and listening to like this video, to subscribe to the channel, and leave your comments. Tell us what your ranking is, and just general feedback on our work here. But again, be nice. I mean it. Be nice.
Yes, be nice, please.
See how nice I am? Be nice. Anyway, well, Mike, it's been a pleasure, and I hope to do this again with you sometime real soon.
Yes, me too.
But yeah. See you later, my friend. This has been fun.
Yeah, it's been a blast. See you soon, my friend.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.